Perfect. So before starting, just a small notice, a technical notice. For those of you who have to speak today, it is important to speak as low as you can. It is important to keep a calm voice and also to speak slowly to help the translators so that we can deliver the message we want to deliver in the most accurate way in all the languages. Okay, so perfect. Welcome to the International Congress to the Togetherness, Communication and Media for Peace that has been promoted by Net1. My name is Lucas Oliveira. I'm a Brazilian journalist, but now I'm living in Paraguay. And I'll be with you today. And I'll be your guide. What is Net1? For those of you who don't know Net1 yet, we're going to now present a video that has been prepared for the Jamfest, the international meeting for the young people of the Focolare movement. So now we're going to watch the video.
É uma associação internacional de profissionais, pesquisadores e estudantes de todas as áreas da comunicação.
It is a space to share experiences, training proposals, projects, and concrete actions that promote universal fraternity.
We accompany, through the cultural products we generate in different formats, processes of peace, social action, and creative citizenship. Promovemos el respeto por la dignidad de cada persona y comunidad en espacios reales y virtuales.
Estoy convencido que la comunicación es una herramienta vital para la construcción de un mundo más unido. Y ser parte de esta red me permite constatar que somos muchos los comprometidos con esta tarea.
Porque eu acredito que em tempos de polarização, a comunicação é capaz de criar diálogos, espaços comuns, espaços de comunidade.
This is where we gather and get to tell the whole world on the spirituality and the life of the Focolare movement as it was brought to us. The founder, Chiara Lubig.
Na união de comunicadores para a construção de uma sociedade mais justa, equilibrada e equitativa.
I'm part of Net1 because it's a space for dialogue without borders, where we can achieve social equity communication.
Me da fuerza saber que somos muchos en distintas partes del mundo que queremos y vivimos por una comunicación que promueve el diálogo ante las grietas eternas, el valor de la persona ante la primicia, comprendiendo cada vez más la comunicación como herramienta de transformação social.
Penso que quando há uma política de cuidado na comunidade, provoca transformações sociais. Por isso, fazer parte de Net1 potencializa esse meu exercício diário.
I am part of Net1 because I believe that the media today can have a big impact on building a more united and peaceful world where brotherhood and respect among people are a priority.
Okay.
Perfect. So now we have watched the video and we have seen some of the main features of the Net1, and we can see somehow the direction of this Net1 movement. And now it is important to present the topic of this Congress. This Congress that wants to face the topic of media and communication. Now I would like to present now Isabel Gatti. She is the coordinator, the international coordinator of Net1. She is also a researcher in sociology at the Catholic University in Argentina. She's also a professor in different levels and in different institutions. And in particular, she has studied communication, culture, and also the religion. Perfect. So she has published many papers, and she has also taken part in different networking institutions, such as the EIC, that is the Group for Communication and Social Change. Isabel, now I give you the floor. Okay, thank you, Lucas. I'm so grateful today. It's a great joy to be here today with you. Togetherness, never again war. To be united, to be in fraternity, to be in unity, to be in peace. This is the cry that emerges from the very core of our Net One community. Today, we gather to speak together with voices from different continents to join in building a new way of communication, a new form of dialogue, as Chiara Lubick encouraged us to promote in the foundational times of Net One. So, with our inspiration, we wish to embrace the suffering of the humanity, which, much like in the early days of the Focolare movement, is once again experiencing the fragmentation of the human community due to war and conflict. So we align ourselves with the efforts coming from both theoretical and practical realms across the world, reflecting on the values that gave birth to our proposal. So dialogical and generative communication, solutions journalism, then responsible communication, and communication for social change. These are some of the perspectives with which we identify. With this event, we inaugurate the first activity to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our association. So we have made a broad call for participation to show that many share these convictions with us. And we have chosen to share abstracts and to provide spaces for dialogue, enriching our proposals so that next year we can offer an electronic publication that actually captures the richness of our work, emphasizing the positive aspects. So for this reason, in response to fake news, we propose dialogical journalism that connects sources of information with journalists, fostering ethical bonds that add value to each instance of news generation. So in response to the manipulation of algorithms in the digital world and the resulting influence on social polarization, we join in promoting a digital oath for the ethical self-regulation of those working in these fields. And at the same time, we support the Global Digital Compact promoted by the United Nations, which advocates for state legislation to consider the digital realm as a common good of humanity, thus ensuring access and participation with greater social equity for all countries. And then, in response to communicative inequality, where some voices are heard while others are silenced, we aim to strengthen the edu-communicative perspectives, focusing on educating audiences and the various actors throughout the communicative process. This way, every person and every social group can ensure their physical and symbolic survival, as every community holds value for the broader social fabric. And that is something that we really want to emphasize. So these 25 years of walking together with the natural ups and downs of anyone committed to a dream have been sustained by the conviction that human fraternity is possible. So this belief is the driving force behind the personal and community experiences we initiate every day. And we have learned a great deal, which is one of the pillars supporting our intercultural dialogues in the broadest sense. Recognizing that it is essential to learn from others who differ in age, culture, and professional background. So this openness allows us to appreciate the richness that each person and community can offer. So Chiara Lubick, in the year 2000, presented us a model, a treasure. She introduced us to the abandoned Jesus as the apple of God's eye, who, through deep love for every person, embraces all the pain of humanity. And this makes it possible to regenerate the social fabric, reaching out to the different other, whom we might not have chosen ourselves, the migrant, the poor, or those holding opposing views. So this proposal pushed us to enter spaces that our sensitivities might have rejected due to the conflicts they presented. So from each of these experiences, we emerged stronger because by going beyond ourselves, we grew and we experienced the truth of our convictions. We rediscovered that relationship building aimed at the common good, making evident that we are one human family, and that can be the answer to the fractures of the present moment. An Argentinian singer, highly esteemed in our country, Leon Gieco, has a famous song that accompanied us in our struggles for the recovery of democracy more than 40 years ago. So in one of his verses, he proclaims, "I only ask God that war does not become indifferent to me." Because we are not indifferent, we offer this space as a contribution to join many others working for peace. Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. You presented in a beautiful way this day and this session. Of course, your contribution is a very valuable one. And now we give the floor to Luis Marquez, who will coordinate the first today's panel, whose topic is digital ethics and collective intelligence. So thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Isabel. Good morning, everyone. My name is Luis Marquez. I'm a journalist and also I'm a researcher. So we are going to start today's panel that has the central topic that is digital ethics and collective intelligence. Each speaker has 8 minutes for the presentation, so I ask you to speak slowly, and I really ask you to help our translators. So now we can kick off with this panel. So the first panelist is Andrea Galluzzi. So, my apologies for the pronunciation of your name, Andrea. And he will talk about the topic of the self and the we through the technological shell, convergences and divergences in the mediation between human and digital. So Andrea Galluzzi is an engineer, is an electronic engineer, and he has done a PhD in the field of philosophy at the Sophia Institute in collaboration with Perugia University. He's worked on the technical philosophy and he's worked on the relationship between the human being and the knowledge with different publications. He's also part of the steering committee at the Institute for the
Grazie a tutti.
Human Philosophy. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I will read my contribution, and I think I will not go beyond the 8 minutes. But if I go beyond the 8 minutes, please say so. So the title of today's speech, The Self and the We Through the Technological Shell. So techno-scientific advances and the development of artificial intelligence have gradually blurred the boundaries between the biological and the synthetic, the real and the virtual, the true and the false. In just a few decades, they have altered paths we once thought immutable, not only due to the achievements reached, but also in how we have engineered the world and, in some ways, ourselves. So digital technologies have made inroads even into the formation of our personal identities. So these new devices have not only introduced new habits or lifestyles, something that normally happens when new commonly used technologies are adopted, but they have also given each person the opportunity to access tools to construct a representation of themselves into the world. We must therefore reflect on the delicate balance between individual self-construction and the fragility of a we that is still unprepared to face the challenges and consequences of this evolution. The pervasive nature of anthropological phenomena related to digital developments compels us to seek conceptual categories capable of capturing the essence of these transformations, allowing us to interpret them more deeply. A first useful category for analyzing these phenomena is what we call the technological shell. By this term, we refer to the ensemble of information technologies that serve the individual, acting as an intermediary between the subject and the surrounding world. We can imagine this entity as an invisible, intangible, yet concrete envelope that acts proactively, not only inwardly towards the person it cares for, but also outwardly as a mechanism for reception, defense, or filtering, providing the individual with new ways to express and understand their identity. The dimensions through which the subject expresses themselves and develops self-awareness are in fact multiple. We can, for example, distinguish a material self, representing the bodily dimension, then a phenomenal self, consisting of the events that form part of the subject's experience, then a cognitive self, identifying the mind regardless of its phenomenological features, then a social self as a product of relationships with others, then an ecological self relating to the environment and physical processes in close contact with the individual that influence their state, and then a virtual self resulting from the extensions of the self made possible by technologies that alter the relationships between the individual and the external world, and then a narrative self, the story we tell about ourselves, and so on. So each of these aspects, though others can be added without exhausting the complexity and also the irreducibility of the subject, is influenced by the dynamics of the technological shell. This shell tends to incorporate increasingly larger portions of the individual's existential experience, thus redefining the relationship between the subject and the world. The gradual transposition of the natural into the artificial, exemplified by generative AI and android robots, both capable of projecting human-like qualities onto what is not human, leads to a kind of hyper-reality, where the line between authenticity and simulation often fades, leaving room primarily for the latter. So within the technological shell, the perception of reality undergoes alterations. It is mediated, processed, filtered, and presented back to the subject, who can, in turn, reinvent and offer new images of themselves, thus fulfilling their innate will to power.
Questi concetti trovano una
So these concepts
correlazione
correlate
con
with a human
l'attitudine
tendency
umana
to
a
find
ritrovare un po'
a
di sé
part
nelle
of
cose che
oneself
vengono
in the
realizzate
creations of
attraverso il
one's
proprio
ingenuity.
ingegno. Gli apparati e i
So the devices
dispositivi
and
che
apparatuses
progettiamo
we
e
design and
realizziamo
construct
rispecchiano infatti in
reflect to
qualche
some
modo la
extent
nostra
our personality,
personalità, le
intentions,
nostre
and way of
intenzioni, il
conceiving
nostro modo di
existence.
essere e di concepire l'esistenza. Tanto da poter dire, con Adriano
And
Fabris,
as Adriano
che le
Fabris
macchine e gli
suggests, machines and
automatismi sono ciò che
automations are
riflette la nostra
what
immagine e
reflects
la
our
prolunga nel
image
mondo.
and extends it into the world.
Questa dinamica
This
ci
dynamic urges
suggerisce di
us to
analizzare
examine the
l'evoluzione
technological
tecnologica degli
evolution
ultimi
of
decenni
recent
sotto la
decades
lente concettuale di una
through the
seconda
conceptual lens of a
categoria
second
chiave,
key
quella delle
category,
tecnologie
that of
convergenti,
converging technologies,
formulate concettualmente
conceptually
nel
formulated in
2001 sotto
2001 under
l'acronimo
the acronym
NBIC,
NBIC,
Nanotechnology,
nanotechnology,
Biotechnology,
biotechnology,
Information
information
Technology and
technology,
Cognitive
and
Science,
cognitive
valutandone
science,
le
and to
conseguenze sulla sfera
assess their
umana.
impact on the
In
human
linea
sphere.
generale, il
So in
carattere
general,
di
the characteristic
convergenza
of
si può
convergence
percepire
can be
come
perceived
sintesi
as a
delle
synthesis
traiettorie
of the
descritte dalle
trajectories
tecnologie
described by
sotto la
technologies
spinta del
driven
progresso.
by progress.
Lo si vede
So it
emergere
becomes
questo, ad
evident, for
esempio,
instance, in the
nella progressiva
unification of various
unificazione di vari
subsystems,
sottosistemi,
such as
trasporti,
transportation,
comunicazione,
communication,
produzione
energy
dell'energia,
production,
produzione
industrial
industriale,
production,
eccetera,
etc.,
in
etc.,
un unico grande
into a
sistema in
single
cui tutto è
vast system
interconnesso
where
e in
everything
cui
is
ogni settore
interconnected and
interagisce con gli
each
altri in
sector
reciproca
interacts with the others
interdipendenza.
in mutual
Lo si vede anche nei
interdependence.
processi di
Or
miniaturizzazione e
also in the
integrazione dell'elettronica digitale,
miniaturization and
o
integration
ancora nei
of digital
tentativi
electronics, we can see
dell'ingegneria
that.
di
Or, for instance, we can
sintetizzare
see that also in
artificialmente ciò che ci
the
costituisce
engineering attempts
biologicamente.
to artificially replicate
Più
what biologically
specificamente,
constitutes
il
us.
carattere
More
convergente
specifically, the
deriva dal fatto
convergent
che le
nature
discipline
arises from the fact
NBIC
that
non si
the
sviluppano in modo separato
NBIC
e
disciplines do
settoriale,
not
ma si
develop in
trovano in uno
separate
stato di
sectoral
sempre più
ways,
stretta e
but
sinergica
are
connessione
increasingly
reciproca,
interconnected,
mirando a
aiming to
migliorare e
enhance
potenziare
human
le capacità
capabilities,
umane, il
social
benessere
well-being,
sociale, la
industrial
produttività
productivity,
industriale e
and
molti altri
more.
aspetti. La costruzione di uno scenario
However, the
tecnologico
construction of a
favorevole allo
technological
sviluppo, al
scenario
benessere e al
conducive to
potenziamento
development,
umano, senza
well-being, and
dubbio
human
auspicabile,
enhancement, desirable
non è però
though it may
sufficiente
be,
di per sé a
is not
realizzare
sufficient in
una
itself
civiltà
to create an
evoluta
advanced
anche dal punto di
civilization from
vista
an ethical
etico-esistenziale.
existential perspective.
Come infatti sottolineano
As
gran
many
parte delle
philosophical
riflessioni
reflections on
filosofiche del
of the
XX e del
20th
XXI
and
secolo,
21st centuries emphasize,
molte innovazioni portano
many,
con sé un carico di
many innovations
opportunità
carry a
e di
load of
rischi
both
in uguale
opportunities and
misura.
risks.
Così, accanto al generale
Alongside the general
soddisfacimento
fulfillment
di
of
questa
humanity's
umana
will to
volontà di
power,
potenza, lo sviluppo tecnico
technical
sembra anche
development
fare
seems also to
emergere
reveal
nella sfera
something that
esistenziale
distances
qualcosa
and
che allontana
progressively
e
cools our
progressivamente
relationships with
raffredda
others
i
and with
rapporti con
life,
gli altri e con le cose della
thus
vita, innescando, possiamo dire qui,
triggering a
un
process that
processo
diverges from
divergente
the
rispetto a una
ethical
dimensione
dimension.
etica. La storia umana ci ha visto
Human history
naturalmente
has naturally
avanzare tra
advanced
scoperte
through
e innovazioni, ma
discoveries and
quello che è
innovations,
avvenuto
but
nel
what
corso
happened
del
in the
XX
20th
secolo
century
e che
and
continua a
continues after the
verificarsi dopo
digital
le
and information
rivoluzioni
technology
dell'elettronica
revolutions
digitale e
has actually
dell'informatica,
accelerated
ha
progress
impresso al
to
progresso
such an
un'accelerazione tale da
extent
superare la
that
nostra
it
capacità di
surpasses our
reazione e
capacity for
adattamento,
reaction and
cogliendoci spesso
adaptation,
impreparati di fronte ai
often
cambiamenti,
catching us
accentuando
unprepared for
ulteriormente
changes
la
and
percezione di
heightening the
queste
perception of
divergenze.
these
In
divergences.
sintesi, e così
In
concludo,
summary, and now I
al
conclude,
concetto di
the concept
convergenza
of technological
tecnologica sembra
convergence appears to
contrapporsi
be
un rovescio della
countered by
medaglia,
its
di
flip
cui oggi
side,
facciamo
of
gradualmente
which
più
we are becoming
esperienza,
increasingly
cioè
aware.
la
So
sensazione
the
di
sensation of
allontanamento da una
distancing
dimensione
from a more
più
properly human
propriamente umana
dimension,
secondo un processo
according to a
divergente.
divergent process.
La nostra naturale tendenza a
Our
trasformare
natural
il mondo
tendency to
naturale
transform the
attraverso
natural world
l'ingegno
through ingenuity
sembra tradursi,
seems to
cioè,
result
nell'attuazione di
in
processi
technologically
tecnologicamente
convergent
convergenti
processes
che nella
that,
sfera
in the
umana
human
tendono
sphere,
a sfociare
paradoxically
paradossalmente nel loro
lead to
opposto.
their opposite.
La
The
contrapposizione fra i
opposition
concetti
between
di
the concepts of
convergenza sul
convergence
piano
on the
tecnologico
technological
e
level
divergenza
and
sul piano
divergence on the
etico-esistenziale
ethical existential level
costituisce un unico quadro
forms a single
d'insieme, un
unified
tutto,
framework
che caratterizza
that
oggi la nostra esperienza
characterizes our
vivente,
living
in cui
experience today,
entrambi gli
where
aspetti
both
sono
aspects are
compresenti.
present.
Una tale
So
dinamica
this dynamic
invita a
calls for a
valutare
new
con
awareness
una
in
nuova
evaluating the
consapevolezza
transformations
le
induced
trasformazioni
by the
indotte dalla
mediation of the
mediazione di
technological
questo
shell
guscio
that
tecnologico, che
seems
sembra
to
coinvolgere ogni individuo.
envelop each individual.
In questa
So
prospettiva,
from this
il
perspective,
principio secondo
the
il quale
principle
ad
that
ogni
at every
evoluzione
technological
tecnologica deve
evolution must
corrispondere
be
una
matched by
altrettanto solida
equally
crescita umana
robust human growth
diventa sempre più
becomes
attuale
ever
e
more relevant
urgente.
and urgent. So in a context heavily mediated by technologies, between individual autonomy and global connection, this awareness becomes a necessary condition for the balanced development of a self and a we that meets the complexity of the world we are building around us. Thank you.
Grazie a te, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea.
Io chiedo de prossima se
Now
può fare un po'
we have
più
our next
lento
speaker.
per aiutare il traduttore. Bene, e adesso invitiamo Marcele Monra, consulente per le politiche tecnologiche.
Marcel Monra,
Ciao,
the
Marcele.
consultant for technology policies. Hello,
E
Marcel.
lo sviluppo
And
internazionale.
international development.
Candidata
She
a
is
Mid-Career
candidate
Master of
to
Public
the
Administration
Master of
presso la
in Public
Robert
Administration
Kennedy School
at the Robert
of
Kennedy
Government.
School of
Anche
Government.
Master Europeo in Informatica
And
e in
she has
politiche
a European
pubbliche.
Master's in
Studia
IT
come
and
gli
Public Policies.
attori
She studies
pubblici e
how
privati
public and
possono
private
definire le
actors
regole
can
per
define the
implementazione
rules
e
for the
l'uso delle
implementation and
tecnologie
use of
digitali,
technologies
in
and
particolare
digital technology,
dell'intelligenza
specifically
artificiale.
AI.
Marcele, per favore.
Marcela, over to you.
Grazie and good morning, everyone. I will speak in English, even though I can speak in Italian, but I wrote my abstract in English and I will read it in English. And thank you for having me here. And today I'll be talking about artificial intelligence and global governance. And we start from a definition. The Stanford University Human-Centered AI Lab defines intelligence as the ability to learn and perform tasks effectively, addressing challenges and achieving goals, even in uncertain conditions. This distinguishes intelligence from mere flexibility, consistency, and reliability, which a programmed robot might possess. The term artificial intelligence, AI, was invented by John Mark Harvey, referring to the science and engineering of creating intelligent machines. AI encompasses technologies utilizing algorithms that mimic human brains to extract statistical patterns, and this is very important, from extensive data sets, allowing for autonomous decision-making and task completion. Applications like ChatGPT may give the impression of this technology being a new phenomenon. However, it has been around for decades. AI has been around for decades already and permeates both personal and professional systems. With global investments set to reach $200 billion by 2025, the AI revolution is still in its infancy. And this underscores an urgency to establish common standards and knowledge to guide the trajectory of AI in the service of humanity and the planet. Why is AI a contemporary global governance challenge? AI has emerged as a prominent contemporary global governance challenge due to, first, its borderless and ubiquitous nature, differing fundamentally from traditional digital technology. It is intricately intertwined with the internet, deemed a universal public good, and facilitates its rapid expansion. This interconnectedness exacerbates the digital divide, with 3.7 billion people lacking internet access. As highlighted by the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed in 2021, the digital divide is becoming the new face of inequality, and the explosion of AI will exacerbate this trend. Collaborative efforts within the international community are essential to address issues like broadband access, infrastructure development, data privacy, cybersecurity, and cross-border data flows to ensure a responsible and secure internet usage in the AI landscape. The global advancement of AI highlights shared benefits, but also risks, and also an uneven distribution and gaps between developed and developing countries. PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2017 predicted the largest economic gains from AI in China first, 26%, and North America, 14% in 2030, equating to 10.7 trillion and representing nearly 70% of the global economic impact. This imbalance emphasizes the need for collaborative governance frameworks that prioritize underserved and underrepresented communities. The global environmental footprint of AI training and development systems raises concerns. There is a group of researchers who reported that Microsoft used around 700,000 liters of fresh waters to train GPT-3 in its data centers, the equivalent of the amount of water needed to produce 370 BM watts cars or 320 Tesla vehicles, so EVs, electric vehicles. The process itself consumed 1,287 megawatts of electricity and emitted 502 tons of CO2, of carbon dioxide carbon. So in a world already strained by climate change, AI governance really urgently necessitates coordinated efforts to mitigate these negative externalities and ensure the Earth's already limited resources are used in an optimal way. There are three categories that emerge of stakeholders that emerge in the intricate landscape of AI global governance. AI pessimists, AI optimists. The AI doomists, echoed by influential figures like Elon Musk, you heard a lot about him recently with elections here in the US, and many country leaders harbor grave concerns about AI's potential threat to humanity and the planet. Their apprehensions include large-scale unemployment due to automation, algorithm biases, perpetrating discriminations, but also the existential risks of creating superintelligence AI beyond human control. And this stance advocates for very strict regulations of AI, in AI development and application. And on the other side, we have AI optimists who barely emphasize only the transformative potential of AI, particularly revolutionizing healthcare, enhancing productivity, and addressing global challenges as climate change and poverty. And they advocate for free market approaches, so basically allow the market to regulate itself and do not intervene, and increase investments in research and development. And a little bit in the gray area amidst these two poles, they are pragmatists, as coined by Sharon Martin in 2023. The pragmatists occupy a middle ground, acknowledging both the risks and the potentials of AI. They advocate for improved security, accuracy, quality, and safety. I would add also responsibility in AI development. While understanding the realities of long-term challenges, pragmatists emphasize the importance of addressing short-term issues that may be downplayed by both pessimists and optimists. The future of AI global governance demands a nuanced and inclusive approach. It requires recognizing diverse stakeholders' perspectives, engaging in open dialogue that transcend economic and political rivalries. And to conclude, and which is really the focus of my paper and of my abstract, is that developing nations, impoverished nations, and marginalized communities have limited resources to impede their participation in AI research, leaving them behind in the global race and susceptible to exploitation. The pervasive bias in AI training data compounds their vulnerability, reflecting discriminatory patterns. The tech industry's lack of diversity and entry barriers intensify existing inequalities. The UNCTAD's in 2023 unsettling forecast of knowledge slavery, where centralized AI controls knowledge access, underscores the urgency for inclusive AI access. And in my opinion, it is not just an aspiration. It is a crucial imperative for sustainable development and global prosperity, a prerequisite to ensure that AI empowers all and not just the privileged. Thank you.
Grazie a te.
Thank you,
Marcele.
Marcele.
Andiamo via.
And we move on
Laura
to our next speaker,
la presentazione.
Laura
Gerlone.
La
affettivizzazione della
talk
sfera
about
digitale.
affectivization of the digital sphere. Is this a way of coming together or polarizing?
Laura è ricercatrice in semiotica con i
A
Argentina.
researcher in semiotics in Argentina, professor at the Center of Comparative Literature of Argentina. Her research line is the space between emotions and decolonialization and their connection with eco-critical outputs. Second, the writing of the latter Lothman in the light of the affective mirror, post and decolonial thought. Fourth, the development of an ethical, theoretical structure relating to the digital sphere. Thank you. Thank you, Luis.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Bueno, prima di tutto grazie per questo
So first of
spazio
all,
di
thank you
dialogo
for this space of dialogue,
che abbiamo atteso e abbiamo
which we have
preparato
long
e di cui
awaited
siamo
and
veramente
prepared,
felici
and which we are very
che
happy
ci
about.
sia
We're very
la
pleased
realizzazione in questo
finally to be
momento.
here and to see it come about.
Il mio contributo si
My
intitola
contribution is
L'affettivizzazione
called
della
the
sfera digitale,
affectivization
una
of the
via di
digital
unione
sphere,
o di
a way
polarizzazione.
of unifying or polarizing.
Come i
And
ricercatori precedenti
as
leggerò
the
il
previous
mio
researchers,
contributo.
I will be reading my
Negli
contribution.
ultimi 3
In the
anni
last
mi
3
sono
years,
occupata di indagare
I
la
dealt
relazione tra
with
sfera digitale e
investigating the
quella che nelle
relationship
scienze
between the
sociali
digital
viene
sphere and what in
denominata la
social
svolta
sciences is
affettiva o
called the
affective turn,
affective turn.
quale fenomeno
What
caratteristico della contemporaneità.
characteristic phenomenon of the
Recentemente, un
current
gruppo di
times.
ricercatori
Recently, a
italiani
group of Italian
hanno definito
researchers
l'affettivizzazione
defined
come il dominio
affectivization as the
assunto della
absolute
sfera
dominion
pubblica dagli
in the
affetti,
public
o per usare un
sphere
termine
of
caro alla
affection, or
sociologia,
to use a
dalle
term which
emozioni
is dear to
collettive.
sociology, collective
Nelle mie
emotion. In
ricerche
my research,
sostengo che i media
I
digitali,
I
e in
posit that
particolare le
digital media, and
tecnologie per il social
specifically those
networking
of
e
social
la produzione
networking
e
and
condivisione
for
interattiva
the
di
production and
informazioni,
sharing, interactive
fungono
sharing of
oggi da
information,
via
are
per la
today
generazione di uno
a
spazio di
way for an entire
convergenza,
generation for a space of
coesione e
convergent cohesion
propagazione che
and
attrae e facilita le
dissemination,
emozioni
which attracts
collettive.
and facilitates
È
collective
sotto gli occhi
emotion.
di tutti che nei
Everybody
contesti
knows that
online
in
abbiano
online
acquisito una
contacts, they
crescente
have
centralità
acquired a
l'espressione
greater
condivise di
central
sentimenti e
role
stati
when it
d'animo,
comes
che
to
invece di
shared
rimanere
sentiments
relegati
and feelings,
nell'universo
which
dell'intimità,
instead of remaining
diventano
within our
narrazioni
intimate
frammentari del
universe,
sé,
they become fragments
pubblicamente
of
esposte e
the narration
diffuse.
of the self. They are publicly
La mia ricerca
exposed
si
and
accoda
spread.
a un filone emergente
My
di
research
studi che si sta
is
chiedendo se il
part
sistema
of
globale
a
di reti
general
informatiche
direction of studies
interconnesse
which is
non abbia
asking
in
itself
fondo messo in
whether a
primo
global
piano la
system of IT
centralità delle
systems which are
emozioni
connected
collettive nella vita
together
sociale,
has
come
not
un fenomeno che in realtà è
uh,
sempre esistito, ma il
ensured
cui potere
the
sovversivo e
central role of
potenzialmente
collective emotions in
dirompente
social
lo
life.
ha
This is a
relegato alle
phenomenon which has
frontiere
always
residue
existed,
della
but whose
conoscenza.
subversive power is
La sfera digitale
potentially
si profila
very
oggi come uno
strong,
spazio
as
tecnomediato di
previously it was relegated
intensificazione della
in
vita
smaller
pubblica,
ambits. The
che è
digital sphere
parimenti
today
reale e
is a
immateriale, e che può
technological and
dare
media
origine a
space which
meccanismi
intensify
sociali
public
tanto
life and
d'unione,
is
togetherness,
real
di cui
and
parla proprio il
immaterial at the
nostro
same time, and can give
seminario,
origin to
quanto di
togetherness
polarizzazione,
phenomenon and
inclusione ed
polarization phenomenon,
esclusione.
inclusion and
Per
exclusion.
esplorare
In order to
analiticamente questa
analytically
dinamica,
explore this
ho preso in
dynamics,
prestito dall'ambito
I took on
dell'estetica un
loan from
concetto che
aesthetics
ritengo
a
chiave per
concept which I
capire
believe
la
is
natura
central in order to
affettocentrica delle
understand the
società contemporanee,
affective
ossia
centric
l'atmosfera.
nature of
Ritengo infatti che i media
contemporary
digitali, per
societies.
le
That
loro
is the
proprietà
atmosphere. I believe that
socio-tecniche e
digital media, for their
spazio-temporali,
socio-technical
ossia
and space time
immaterialità,
properties,
intertestualità,
non-materiality,
reticolarità,
intertextuality,
networkedness, mobilità,
networkedness, mobility,
replicabilità e remixabilità e
replicability,
ripetitività,
remixability,
favoriscono
and
il formarsi di
repetitivity
spazialità intensive
encourage
sotto
the
forma di comunità
formation of
affettive
intentional
atmosferiche,
spatial dimensions
ossia
under the
comunità
form
che per
of
quanto
atmospheric
estemporanee
affective
sono
communities.
altamente
These are
performative,
extemporaneous but
giacché
highly
sono unite da un
performative because
collante
they are united
identitario
by an
alimentato
identity glue
dall'emozione
which is
collettiva.
fed by a
Il senso di
shared emotion.
appartenenza
The sense of
favorito dai media
belonging
digitali, se da
promoted
un
by
lato ci dà
digital media
l'impressione
on the
di una
one hand
mutua
gives us the impression
comprensione
of
facilmente
reciprocal
raggiungibile,
understanding which is easy to
a questo
reach,
proposito,
and
l'antropologo canadese
the
Marcel Danesi
Canadian
parla di una
anthropologist Marcel
planetarizzazione
Danesi talks about a
dell'umanità, ossia
planetization
di
of
una
humanity,
coscienza
which
che
means
percepiamo come
a
globalmente
conscience
distribuita e
which we
interconnessa,
perceive as globally
dall'altro lato
distributed and
favorisce
interconnected,
dinamiche di
but on the other,
convergenza, connessione e
encourages dynamics
propagazione
of
estremamente
convergence,
viscerali,
connection, and
primitive,
dissemination, which are quite
potenzialmente
visceral, primitive,
coercitive e
potentially
facilmente
coercitive,
comunicabili.
and easy to communicate.
Come ha sottolineato
As
recentemente
recently
Anthony Gutiérrez
Antoni
Rubin nel suo
Gutierrez
libro
Rubi
Gestionar
stated
la
in
emozione
his book,
políticas,
Managing
gestire le emozioni
Political
politiche,
Emotion,
questo
this
fenomeno è
phenomenon is
particolarmente
particularly
visibile
visible
nell'ambito del
within the
politico,
political
ove si può
dimension, where we
votare per
can
un partito o
vote
per
for a
l'altro
party
per
or
il solo
another
effetto di
just
immersione
due
atmosferica
to
nelle arene di
atmospheric
discussione online.
immersion within the
Il
online
politologo
discussion
spagnolo ha
arenas.
posto l'accento
The
sul fatto che la
Spanish
mera
scholar of
ascrizione e
politics has
identificazione
placed the
ideologica
accent on the
sta
fact that the
cedendo sempre più
mere
il terreno alla seduzione dei
belonging
likes,
or
creando quella che lui
ideological
chiama la
identification is
emocrazia.
giving
In uno
more
scenario
space
politico
to the
globale
seduction
in
of
cui i
likes,
governi
called
democraticamente eletti non
democracy,
riescono a
in a
percepire i
global
cittadini.
political scenario where
Appunto,
democratically
Gutierrez Rubin
elected
scrive
governments
la
cannot perceive
somatizzazione
the
dell'opinione
citizens. And he
pubblica
says
sotto
the
forma di umori sociali
somatization of
è un
public
segno
opinion
dei
on the point of
tempi.
view of
Capire le
social
atmosfere,
humus
usa
is a
esattamente
sign
questa
of the time.
parola,
Understanding the
capire le
atmospheres and
atmosfere e i
climate
climi sarà più importante che
is more
misurare le
important than measuring
opinioni, che
opinions,
sono così
which
liquide e
are so
incerte.
liquid and uncertain.
Vorrei infine sottolineare un
Finally, I'd like to
aspetto che
highlight
unisce
an
la
aspect
ricerca
which
sulla
unites
sfera digitale in
research
chiave
on the
affettiva
digital
e
sphere
l'etica
from an
digitale.
affective and ethical point
Il
of view,
ruolo della,
digitally
quella che
speaking.
potremmo
The
chiamare una
role of what we can
atmosferizzazione
call
dello spazio di internet,
atmospherization of the
non
space of
solo nella
internet, not only in
democrazia, o meglio
democracy, or better,
emocrazia,
in the
ma anche nella
democracy of
ricerca della
emotion,
giustizia sociale.
democracy, but also in the
Questo
search
aspetto
of social
rappresenta la
justice. This
seconda linea
aspect
di ricerca
represents
che
a
sto
second
portando
line of
avanti.
research which I am
Come già
bringing forward.
accennato,
As
grazie
I
alle
mentioned already,
specificità
thanks to
tecniche
the
dell'ambiente
technical
digitale,
specificity
i
of the
grandi
digital
utenti,
environment,
ossia gli
great
utenti che
users, that is,
concentrano nelle
those
loro
users who
mani il potere
concentrate in
economico
their hands the
informativo,
economic
possono
and
fare leva
informative
sui
power, can
dispositivi e sulle
leverage on
funzionalità
devices and
algoritmiche per
algorithmic
ricreare
functionalities in
situazioni
order
di
to
nebulosità
recreate
immaginativa
situations of
che evocano gli
imaginative
archetipi affettivi
nebulosity
più
which evoke
profondi,
the affective,
credenze, valori,
deepest
giudizi,
affective
immagini
archetypes,
interiori,
beliefs,
sentimenti
values,
ed
judgment,
emozioni
images,
codificabili.
sentiments,
Risvegliando e
and
facendo
codified
leva
emotions,
su
reawaken them
asimmetrie
by
di potere
leveraging on
consolidate, archetipi
consolidated
che, come
power
vari studi hanno dimostrato, chiamano in
asymmetries.
causa
These
risposte
archetypes,
istintive,
many studies
quasi
have
involontarie e,
proven,
come direbbe
call into
il
play
filosofo
instinctive,
italiano
almost
Griffero,
involuntary
semi-automatiche,
responses
senza
and
passare attraverso
semi-automatic, as
complesse
Griffero
strutture
says, Italian
discorsive.
philosopher, without going through
Gli studiosi
complex
di
discursive
comunicazione che si occupano di
concepts. The
migrazione
scholars of
sono ben
communication
consapevoli di
dealing
questo
with migration are
meccanismo.
well aware of
Diverse
this
ricerche
mechanism.
hanno
Various
preso in
researchers have
considerazione il
taken into
linguaggio visivo
consideration the
digitale,
digital
hanno
visual
dimostrato
language
che la
and have
trasmissione
proven that
multipiattaforma di
the
determinati modelli
multi-platform
iconici sotto
transmission
forma di
of certain
microstorie può
iconic
suscitare la
models under the form of
polarizzazione
microstories
emotiva
can
delle
create
società
emotional
ospitanti
polarization of
attraverso
hosting
risonanze
communities
collettive
through
semplificate,
simplified
ovvero,
collective resonance,
sempre
which
come sottolinea
is,
Griffero,
as
risposte
Grifero says,
riflessivo-motorie, preconsce o
reflective and
semiconsce, e
motor
mettere in modo una dinamica
pre-conscious
di
and
inclusione-esclusione
responses, according to
dei
Grifero,
migranti.
and to set in motion
Concludo
a
che
dynamic
in
of
questa
inclusion or
prospettiva lo
exclusion of
studio dei
migrants. As I
media,
conclude, I
in
would say
vista
that in
della
this perspective,
ricerca
the
della
study of media
pace,
in
deve tener
view
conto
of
di quella che
search for peace needs to bear
definisco,
in mind what
insieme ad
I
altri
define,
ricercatori,
along with
la
other researchers,
colonialità
digital
digitale, ossia la
colonialness.
capacità
That is the
dell'ecosistema
ability
digitale
of the
di
digital
risvegliare e
ecosystem
rafforzare
to reawaken and
attraverso
to
il
strengthen
rapimento
through
sensoriale
a
effettivo,
sensorial
ossia
and
quello che chiamo il
affective
coinvolgimento
rape, what
atmosferico,
we
certi
call
immaginari egemonici
atmospheric
e persino di
involvement, and it
alimentare e
brings
incanalare asimmetrie di
about
potere
hegemonic
di lunga data.
imaginary
Grazie.
elements able to channel the lack of
Grazie a te,
symmetry
Laura.
and power. And this has been
Il
true for a
prossimo
long time.
di
Thank you.
questo primo
Thank you.
panel
As
è
we come
la
to the
prossima,
next speaker,
Daniela Baudino.
Daniela Baudino.
Ciao Daniela.
Hello, Daniela.
Daniela parlerà
Daniela will speak
sull'innovazione
about
digitale e intelligenza
digital
artificiale
innovation,
nella
artificial
pubblica
intelligence in
amministrazione,
the public
sfide, impatto
administration,
e
the
nuove
challenges,
possibilità.
impact, and new
Daniela è
opportunities.
professionista
Daniela
con
is
capacità di
a
organizzazione e
professional, has
risoluzione
a
di
professional
problemi,
profile with
esperta in
capacity of
sviluppo
problem
web,
solving. She's an
relazione
expert
con il
in web
pubblico,
development,
con
relations
competenze in
with
gestione
the
progetti
public,
in
and
negoziazione,
ability of
esperienza accreditata
project
nella
management. Her
gestione dei gruppi,
ability
laurea magistrale
stems
in
to
comunicazione e culture del
managing
media
groups, and she has
dell'Università di
a
Torino,
degree at the University of
innovazione
Turin in
digitale in
media and group
comunicazione
management,
per
digital
l'Università
innovation
di
and
Foggia.
communication of Foggia
Grazie
University.
Daniela,
Thank you very much,
con te.
and over to you.
Ciao, sono Daniela
Hello,
e
so my name
lavoro
is
presso
Daniela.
l'ufficio
Currently, I'm
pubblico, ufficio
working at the
relazioni con il
Public Relations
pubblico di
Office
un
of
grosso
the
comune in Italia
Municipality of Genoa
e
in Italy.
come appunto è
So
stato
my
appena detto,
municipality
ho
is a
appena
pretty
conseguito la
interesting
laurea
and
in
big
innovazione
municipality,
digitale e
and I recently defended
comunicazione,
my thesis at
proprio
the
su
University of
questo tema,
Foggia,
ovvero
titled
l'intelligenza artificiale nella
Digital
pubblica
Innovation and
amministrazione in
Artificial
Italia,
Intelligence
quali
in
sono le
Public
sfide,
Administration,
l'impatto e le nuove
Challenges,
possibilità che
Impact,
si
and New
aprono.
Possibilities.
L'intelligenza
So
artificiale è
artificial
un
intelligence,
fenomeno
AI, is the
che sta
technological
definendo il tempo in
phenomenon
cui
most
viviamo,
defining the
perché
era we live in,
permea la nostra
permeating
quotidianità,
our daily
fino
lives
a non
to the
farcelo più
point where
percepire
it is no
come un
longer
qualcosa
perceived
di
as
avveniristico,
futuristic,
ma
but
qualcosa di
as
ordinario.
routine and
Come
ordinary.
dipendente che lavora in un ente
So, as
pubblico,
a
mi
person
sono
working
chiesta quale
in a
fosse
public entity,
l'impatto che questa
I
tecnologia
asked
può
myself,
avere
what is the
verso il mio
impact that
lavoro,
this technology can have on my
che è
job?
quello di avere
And of
perseguire
course,
l'obiettivo di
we want
curare
to
gli
go
interessi della
towards the
collettività e
care
perseguire
of the public
l'interesse
interest, and we
pubblico.
want to follow, of course, the public interest more in general.
In Italia ci sono
So
stati
in Italy,
vari,
there have been
insomma, vari lavori, varie
many
agende e
many
varie
agendas, there have been
strutture
many
ministeriali che
publications,
si
and
sono
also
occupati di
many public
innovazione e in
administration
modo
institutions that
particolare
have
nel
talked
piano
about
triennale
digitalization,
per
and in particular
l'informatica
in the latest three-year
emanato
plan for information
recentemente,
technology,
l'intelligenza
artificial intelligence
artificiale
is included
finalmente è stata
as a
inserita come
strategic
leva
lever
strategica
to
per
achieve the
raggiungere un
highest
livello di
possible level of
digitalizzazione quanto più
digitalization,
possibile elevato anche nella pubblica
and
amministrazione.
also in the public administration, of course.
Uno degli aspetti più
So one of the
critici
most
legato alle
critical aspects of
tecnologie è che
technology
se
is
da una
that
parte
while
l'aspetto tecnologico
technological
evolve
advancements progress
velocemente,
rapidly,
le istituzioni non
institutions
riescono a
struggle
stare al
to
tempo con
issue
queste
appropriate
evoluzioni
regulations
tecnologiche
at a similar
e
pace to
quindi a
outline
trovare
its boundaries of
normative
application.
adeguate che
So
traccino i
of course
confini di
there's a struggle
applicazione.
when it comes to finding
Da più
the
parti si chiedeva
necessary
ad esse
regulations.
di produrre normative
So
per gestire
various stakeholders
adeguatamente
have
il
called upon
sempre maggior
institutions to
utilizzo
produce
che facciamo
regulations to
dell'intelligenza
adequately
artificiale.
manage the increasing use
Il
of
primo
AI.
regolamento nel
The
mondo
first
sul
regulation in
tema
the
è
world on this
l'AI
topic,
Act,
it's
che è stato
the
approvato dal
AI
Parlamento
Act
europeo
that was
nel giugno
approved by the European
2024.
Parliament in June
Lo
2024.
scopo, che è anche una
The aim
sfida,
and also the
è quella
challenge
di
of this
riuscire a
legislation
inquadrare da un
is to
punto di vista
provide
normativo lo
a
sviluppo
regulatory
dell'intelligenza
framework for
artificiale,
AI development
bilanciando
that
però anche la
balances the
necessità
need
di non
to
spegnere
maintain
la
the
spinta
innovative
innovativa,
drive of companies
perché ci
growing in
sono
this
tante
market
imprese che stanno
with the
crescendo proprio
necessity
in
to
questo mercato.
safeguard certain
Dall'altra parte
fundamental
bisogna
rights.
però
Of
anche
course, we have to recognize
garantire i
that there are
diritti
many companies
inviolabili.
growing into this market.
Per fare questo
To
si è
achieve
arrivati alla
this, the
definizione
regulation
di 4
classifies AI
livelli
applications into
in cui
4
raccogliere le
risk
applicazioni di
levels.
intelligenza artificiale che vogliono essere
And
messe sul
these are different
mercato
levels, of course, that we need to take into
a
account when it
seconda del
comes to an
rischio che
AI
possono
application.
portare. Abbiamo quindi il
There can
rischio
be a
minimo,
minimal
il
risk,
rischio limitato,
there can be a
l'alto
limited risk,
rischio,
there can be a
come
high
per
risk.
esempio i
For
sistemi di
instance,
credit scoring o
in
di
the credit
selezione del
scoring or
personale,
recruitment
e
systems.
il rischio non
And then there can be
accettabile,
an
al
unacceptable
cui
risk,
interno ricadono
which includes
applicazioni di cui viene
applications whose
proprio
use is
vietato l'uso,
prohibited,
come il
such as
riconoscimento facciale
biometric facial
biometrico in luoghi
recognition in public
pubblici.
places.
Quando si costruisce
So under this
un'applicazione
system,
di intelligenza
those
artificiale,
wishing to
due
develop an
sono i
AI system
punti
must first
fondamentali:
verify
la
which
scelta,
category it falls
l'implementazione e il
under.
monitoraggio dei
So
dati utilizzati per
if
istruire gli
identified as a
algoritmi
high-risk system
e
after
il
development and conformity
ripensamento
assessment,
di un
it
modello
must be
organizzativo con
registered in
l'introduzione
a
di nuove
specific EU
competenze.
database,
Questo vale anche per
and
la
a
pubblica
declaration of
amministrazione.
conformity must be filed
Il
before it
fatto di
can
avere
be
dei dati
marketed.
completi,
So it is important to have
accurati e di qualità è
complete data and
importante
also
perché
high-quality
permette di
data.
avere
This is very
prestazioni
important
affidabili
to go
e
towards a
complete, di
trustworthy system.
evitare la
And
creazione di
in this way,
bias
we
e la
can
replicazione di
avoid the
discriminazioni
bias
e di
replication and also
diminuire la possibilità di
the
arrivare
bias
a risultati
confirmation.
errati.
And in this way, we don't get to wrong
In
results.
concreto, l'intelligenza artificiale
So
nella pubblica
the artificial
amministrazione può
intelligence into the
intervenire
public
sia
administration
verso il
can
cittadino
help the
sia nella
citizens
parte
on
più
one hand, and on the
amministrativa e
other hand, can
organizzativa.
help the
Nel
public
primo caso
administration
parliamo
itself
dei chatbot che
in the
permettono
bureaucracy.
di
Of course, in the first case, we
migliorare la
talk about
qualità della
the chatbots that
risposta e dei
can improve
processi,
the quality of
ma
response and also the
possono
quality of all
dall'altra
the
parte
processes. But on the other
portare a
hand,
risposte non
there can
pertinenti.
be non
Poi ci sono strumenti di traduzione linguistica,
consistent
la
answers.
creazione di servizi
Then
personalizzati offerti
there's the
sulla base
creation
delle
of
reali necessità dell'utente,
customized
quindi dei
services
cittadini,
depending on the
potendo
citizens we
così
are referring to.
anticipare le sue
In this way,
richieste e
we
le sue
can
necessità,
help the citizens with the
strumenti di
specific needs
inclusione
that
che
the citizens
permettono per
have.
esempio di
And in
individuare
this way, we can,
in
for
maniera
instance,
precoce situazioni
detect
di povertà dove poter
some
intervenire.
poor situations where
In
we need
ambito più
to
amministrativo,
intervene.
l'utilizzo
In the
dell'intelligenza
public
artificiale
administration, the use of artificial
permette
intelligence
di
allows
dematerializzare e quindi di gestire in
for
maniere
process
più efficienti
dematerialization,
documenti e flussi di
leading to
lavoro,
more efficient document management
una
and
gestione più
workflow
attenta rispetto alla
optimization,
parte economica,
more precise tax management
ridurre e
by
individuare le
detecting
anomalie
anomalies.
e anche il
And then it is possible
monitoraggio e
also
la
to go
prevenzione
towards a better
predittiva
predictive monitoring
attraverso un
and
cruscotto dei
prevention
dati che
through data
permetta di prendere
dashboards,
decisioni
enabling informed
informate
decision making, managing aspects like traffic or water networks, preventing avoiding breakdowns, interruptions, delays, and monitoring critical infrastructure to anticipate threats, to detect anomalies and malfunctions before they occur, thus reducing repair costs. So AI in public administration can free up resources for more complex tasks, to support also data-driven decision-making, to reduce costs, to enhance or eliminate certain activities, and also to improve the quality of interaction with citizens. And of course, that is our main goal. However, adequate policies, hardware investments, and personnel with the necessary skills, including an understanding of AI's functioning to interpret its responses, are needed. Because, of course, we need to understand how the artificial intelligence works. So the stakeholders involved in this digitalization process through artificial intelligence are employees and users, for instance, the citizens. So according to a study by FBA and Microsoft Italy on artificial intelligence and public administration, well, we see that public administration employees have not developed significant biases against AI, but rather surprisingly, they do not fear for their future, but believe that AI can bring benefits in terms of productivity, work quality, and the development of new skills. Critical aspects pertain to the organizational level, as they consider the structure and the management unprepared to handle work and personnel adequately. And of course, then there are also some ethical concerns, such as the reduced empathy towards citizens. So in my thesis, I conducted a survey with a sample of citizens to understand their points of view, on artificial intelligence. In particular, we have analyzed the relationship between artificial intelligence and their closest public administration. We have seen that their interactions are infrequent, mainly to request information on personal procedures, but nearly half are satisfied with their interactions with their municipality. So, many of the actions they perform towards public administration are done through web applications, indicating widespread digitalization. Email remains consistently used, and also social networks are used for a smarter approach and asynchronous communication. And then, of course, there's always the physical office that is always preferred for better explanation and human contact. And we need, of course, that human contact, and the citizens have said that many times. Regarding improving public administration through AI, the opinion is rather negative, though open to improvement in various aspects such as speed, efficiency, clarity, simplification, productivity, and so on. I've asked a very specific question. Would you trust the answers that are given by an artificial intelligence? And we can see actually like an attitude of prudence. So people are very cautious. There's a very cautious attitude that has emerged. So perceived criticalities relate to the inability to understand complex situations, so the lack of a human dimension and difficulties for certain groups of users. So the perceived advantage lies mainly in easier access to services. So in conclusion, we can say that the human being now is facing the impact of a new technology as never before in the human history, given the speed of the artificial intelligence deployment. The outcome will be a partial substitution of the human being. And of course, there will be a development of new skills for the human being. And artificial intelligence could be the driving force that
di
allows the public
rendere più
administration
moderna la sua
to
struttura e quindi
modernize
avere un
its own
rapporto migliore
structure,
con i suoi
and
cittadini.
thus it could be possible like a better relationship with the
Per fare
citizens.
questo è
To do
necessario che
that,
ci sia un aiuto
it is
però anche da
important
parte
to
delle
have
istituzioni,
also
quindi stati
a contribution
europei in
from
questo caso
the also European
recepiscano il
institutions,
nuovo regolamento,
because of
perché
course there
dove
must be a
i regolamenti
regulation.
ancora non ci sono,
We
questi
need to
possono essere
adopt new
emanati,
regulations, of
ma
course,
soprattutto che le amministrazioni
and
pubbliche
the
si aprano a
public administrations
sperimentazioni
must
che possono
open up
diventare
to
patrimonio comune,
a new experimentation
mantenendo un
process
equilibrio
to
operativo che
also
permette ai cittadini di
keep
comunicare nei modi che
constantly a
più
perfect balance
preferiscono, con un'attenzione
to help the
particolare a quelle
citizens
persone
with a
che non
specific
sono in grado di
attention
utilizzare i dispositivi,
on the
ancora in
people that
grado di
cannot
utilizzare i
use
dispositivi
the
digitali.
electronic
Le tre
and
parole
digital
chiave che ho
devices yet.
individuato alla fine del
So the
mio
three
lavoro
keywords
e
that
che
can drive
possono
success
fare
in
la
this process
fortuna in questo
are
processo di inserimento dell'intelligenza artificiale nella vita
these words
dell'uomo
are
sono sperimentazione,
experimentation,
condivisione ed
sharing, and
equilibrio.
balance.
Grazie
Thank you.
Daniela.
Thank you, Daniela.
Come facciamo con il tempo? Perché
Okay, now what should we do now?
sta
Let's
un
see.
poco. Continuiamo, Isabel?
Should we go ahead or
Avanti,
not?
ok.
Yes, let's go ahead.
Il prossimo
Perfect.
è
So the
Marco
next speaker
Sanchione.
is
Marco, ciao.
the next speaker is Marco
Lui è professore di
Sanchioni.
filosofia
He
e
is
della
professor of
scienza presso
philosophy
l'Istituto
at
Universitario
the
Sofia,
Sophia
dottorato in
Institute.
fisica
He has a
teorica
PhD
presso
in
il
theoretical
Niels
physics
Bohr
at
Institute di Copenaghen,
the in at
con un secondo
a
dottorato in
university in Copenhagen.
filosofia della fisica,
He also has a
linee di
second
ricerca,
PhD in
fondamenti della fisica e sulla filosofia
in
della
physics
scienza,
philosophy,
con un particolare interesse
and
per
is
la
very
gravità
interested
quantistica e
into
buchi
the
neri.
quantum
Marco, per
gravity
favore.
and black holes. Okay,
Grazie,
Marco, the
grazie
floor
Luis e
is yours.
grazie
Okay,
anche
thank you.
Isabel e
Thanks,
tutti
Emilian.
di avermi invitato a
Thank you,
questo
Isabel. Thank
bel
you,
convegno.
Luis.
Ecco.
Thank you for
Allora, anche
inviting me
io leggo
into
il mio
this
testo.
beautiful congress. So I'm going to read my
Questo
presentation.
mio breve intervento
So this brief
riguarda il
presentation addresses the
vastissimo
vast
tema del
topic
binomio
of
tra
the
tecnica
dichotomy
e
between
saggezza
technique and wisdom in the age of artificial intelligence.
Abbiamo problemi.
Unfortunately, we have
No.
connection issues with the speaker. We cannot hear the speaker.
No, non ti sentiamo. Ci sentiamo,
We
Marco?
cannot hear you, Marco. Can you
Non
hear
so
us?
se possiamo fare un
Maybe
cambio.
we can change the speaker
Mariani
now.
c'è?
Mariani is here. Mariani, are you
Sì,
here with
grazie
us?
Mariani.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So Marian, you can
ritorniamo
go ahead. And then we'll go back to Marco.
Così, grazie Mariani.
Okay, so
Mariani
thank you, Mariani. Thank you, Marian.
parlerà adesso
So,
così, è
Marian,
ingegnere della
the floor is yours.
comunicazione,
You're
lavora
communication
come
engineer.
project manager
She works
presso
as
IP
project
Engineer
manager
Pro,
as the
un
engineer
fornitore di soluzioni che
supplier
ha
of
sede
solutions
in Beirut,
with
Dubai,
headquarters in
Parigi e il
Beirut,
Cairo.
Paris, and El Cairo.
Si trova svolgendo il
Now,
dottorato di
she's doing
ricerca
her
su cultura
PhD
dell'unità in
on the
relazione
culture of
all'etica
unity,
dell'IA
and
presso
in particular,
l'Istituto
she's working
Universitario
on
Sofia
the ethical issues
Lopiano,
at the
Italia.
Sophia Institute in
È
Lopiano
una
in
delle
Italy.
coordinatrici
So she's
del
one of the
progetto
coordinators of the
Digital One.
project Digital One.
Lei parlerà su
Perfect. So she
comunicazione
is
digitale
going
per la
to talk
pace, una
about the digital
responsabilità per
communication for
tutti.
peace,
Dopo
a responsibility for
ritorniamo a
all.
Marco.
Then we'll
Va
go
bene?
back to Marco, okay?
Grazie.
Thank you.
Grazie, Luis. Thank you. I will continue in English. I really liked the title of this seminar about peace, so I focused a little bit on that side. The title is digital for my part is Digital Communications for Peace, a Responsibility for All. As we see today, the world is ever more polarized. The media, the technologies in all their forms, they are being used every day, all day, and by everyone. Of course, every person uses it to serve its own purpose. And as diverse as people are, as diverse are the purposes and the ways it is being used. On a large scale, we see some patterns. Let me just state a few. For example, the use of social media and digital platforms in inciting hate and polarization along the lines of political beliefs, identity, color, religion, and even climate change is beginning to be acknowledged. Digital platforms' meteoric rise to ubiquity has leveraged a narrative of empowering people through access to information.
Daniela, per favore, un po' più lento per noi. Un po' più lento.
Okay. So I was saying the digital platform's meteoric rise to ubiquity has leveraged a narrative of empowering people through the access to information, to technologies, to algorithms, as well as freedom of expression. That being said, the media today can choose and track who has freedom of expression and who doesn't, while what seems to be freedom in some places is being rebuffed or even attacked in some other ways. This year has in fact been one of the bloodiest for journalists in our region. I live in next to Beirut, with an official number of 137 journalists being killed. Even a few weeks ago, a whole building where journalists were staying to cover the southern Warren region was targeted by a missile overnight and 3 journalists were killed. As this is a very obvious and clear attack on those who expose the truth in our side of the region, in Western media, the bias, intentional or embedded, is the restriction of freedom of expression, and all those who try to speak differently are confronted in different, more subtle way. On the other hand, the technologies behind the social media platforms also play a crucial role in generating or not generating peace. Algorithms can be and are actually, we have seen this recently, pushing okay. So algorithms can be and are pushing towards an agenda which is in turn polarized and not neutral. It decides what you see and what you don't see, what you buy depending on what data you have already shared with or without your consent. Furthermore, advanced technology such as AI has a list of possible applications in war regions. Weapons with AI are given a specific algorithm, and as the algorithm runs, it decides who the list of target is. Then the list is checked one after the other, and the autonomous weapon tracks, follows, and kills the defined targets. How can we build peace in all of this? Talking here from a country directly targeted by violent technological and armed attacks, it's crucial to realize that the way for peace involves everyone and everyone together. In fact, working for peace today involves the user of the social media, the content creators, the actors behind the algorithms, behind the machines, the engineers, the data experts, everyone, because everyone is concerned. We are really deeply immersed in technology in everything we do. So building a future of peace depends more than ever on our use of this technology and how it is designed, as the same technologies can be used for good, can also be used to harm, as I have mentioned before. At Sophia and the university and with Net1, we have looked at the current situation and are trying to come up with an ethical framework that aims to guide all of these actors together towards a better future. It was called the Digital Oath, inspired by the Hippocratic Oath of the physicist and the medical field by Fadi Shahade, a former president of ICANN. It came to life in Trent in Italy at the end of 2019 in a forum entitled Humanity 4.0, Towards the Communities of the Future, promoted by Sophia and Net1. The Digital Oath provides an approach that looks both at the human behind the content, the algorithms, the digital systems, and the human impacted and concerned by them. It is a change in the perspective of the content writer, the journalist, the data scientist, the software developer, in a way similar to a patient-oriented perspective of a physicist, a human-centered perspective. In its current form, the oath suggests a commitment to ethical standards in a way beneficial to humans, peoples, communities, and the environment. It applies to the regulation called ethics by design by design as defined by Pope Francis in his message on the World Day of Peace. He says, ethical considerations should also be taken into account from the very beginning of research and continue through the phases of experimentation, design, production, distribution, and marketing. This is the approach of ethics by design. End of citation. Indeed, ethical dimensions of digital systems are closely linked to decisions made by those who design. The digital oath today combines the main ethical principles and fundamental values of the human beings and those of the design of digital systems onto one page in the form of 3 sets of pledges. The actors do not need to commit to all 3 sets, but can commit to the digital oath on several cumulative levels, depending how engaged they would like to be. The first level would be to be safe. I want to pledge to be aware of the system that I'm working on and assess as much as possible the impact on the person, the people's, communities, and environment. So this is the first step in the digital oath. The next step would be then to be responsible, to do harm. This is then a set of guardrails or non-maleficent pledges, not to do any harm. The third step, which is the one which is a commitment to the whole of the digital oath, is to be beneficent, to do good. It's a set of guidelines or beneficent pledges. The structure of the oath allows it, as it is today, to be versatile and adaptable to other professions as well. In fact, it's also been adapted to content writers, to journalists, influencers, with the 3 levels of commitment applied to the specificity of the profession. It encourages first not to use, support, or amplify disinformation or hate speech as a safe level. For the responsible level, it encourages to be inclusive. Somebody's talking. It encourages to be inclusive and fair in creating and designing content, and to refuse any attempts at harmful, untruthful content creation. Lastly, the beneficent content writer would pledge to write and publish information that promotes equality, peace, and solidarity between individuals and people, and is especially helpful to the most vulnerable and fragile. Additionally, a pledge was added to write and publish information promoting sustainability and climate friendliness. The digital oath can also go a step forward with educational tools like a digital dice, an initiative parallel to that of the Living Peace International, learning in simple ways about the rules of the digital. Surely, taking an oath is a serious commitment. The digital oath intends to stay active and be close to the people engaged in it, building a network of people working with the same objectives, promoting those who do good, highlighting their actions, encouraging, laying together, etc. The potential of the digital oath comes thus from the power of collective action and shared commitment, driving positive change. In fact, when fixing the bigger objective of not harming, or even better, of doing good, people are aware that their daily decisions and design have impact on the present and the future, and therefore harm can be spared, good can be supplied, and peace can happen. Our lives here in Lebanon depend on this. Thank you for listening.
Grazie a te, Mariani.
Perfect. So
Adesso
thank you,
possiamo
Marianne.
ritornare a
Now we can go
Marco.
back to Marco.
C'è Marco, no?
Marco, are you here with us?
Ah, sì. Grazie.
Ecco, sì, non potevo attivare l'audio. Ecco, grazie, spero che funzioni. Scusate per
I
prima.
hope you can hear
Ecco,
me well.
allora
Apologies for
provo a
before.
ricominciare. Ecco.
I will try to start
Questo
again.
mio breve intervento
This brief
riguarda
contribution
il
of mine
vastissimo tema del
is
binomio
about
tra
the
tecnica e
enormous
saggezza
theme of the
nell'era
binary between
dell'intelligenza
wisdom
artificiale,
and
e
technique in
l'idea
the
sarebbe
time of
quella di
artificial
comprendere come
intelligence.
possiamo
And the idea is that
orientare
of
questa
understanding how we
rivoluzione
can orient
tecnologica
this
verso un nuovo
technological
umanismo.
revolution towards a new humanism.
La tecnica storicamente
Technology
ha avuto il ruolo
historically
di
had
colmare le
the
lacune naturali
path of
dell'essere umano.
filling in the
Fin dalle
natural
origini
shortcomings of the
l'uomo ha
human
utilizzato
being from its
strumenti per
very
superare i
origin.
propri limiti
man has used tools in order to go beyond his or her biological and environmental limits. Throughout time, technique and technology has always become more and more important, transforming itself from a tool to an engine of change, both in social and cultural terms. But with artificial intelligence, we are before a transformation which goes beyond. It is becoming autonomous. This is not about tools which respond to predefined controls, but these are systems that learn, assess, act, and highlight questions which are very deep on our role in this new scenario. AI, with its ability to learn automatically and quickly process information, represents the peak of instrumental rationality, that form of rationality which always tries to optimize, to calculate, and to resolve practical problems. Yet, as Max Weber reminds us in his analysis of modern rationalization, instrumental rationality brings risks with it, the danger of reducing the human experience to a calculation on efficiency, losing sight of the deeper questions of sense and meaning. In other words, though extraordinary, AI is it risks darkening those dimensions that make us human, the ability to reflect ethically, to seek good, to ask ourselves about the ultimate goals of our existence. And this is where we need to recover wisdom. Whereas technology improves our means, wisdom focuses on its final goals. Unfortunately, the speaker seems to be on a weak connection, so we're stopping temporarily until we are able to recover.
Che danno senso alle nostre azioni. Tensione, tecnica e saggezza, ma è una delle sfide più grandi. Intelligenza, Aristotele, nella relazione tra tecnica e efficienza, la fronesis è la saggezza.
Apologies for this loss of translation, but we are having trouble with the speaker's connection.
Ok, Marco ci dice che non arriva, così
Marco tells us that unfortunately he won't be able to speak to us, so we have a text and we will circulate this. So we move on to our dialogue
in questo
rooms.
Momento è un momento di dialogo.
Okay, this is a time of dialogue in the various language groups.
Io voglio
And
una richiesta per i gruppi di dialogo. Chiedo che ogni gruppo
I
abbia
ask
un
that
relatore
every group
e che
elect a
condividiamo nel
rapporteur,
chat
and that we can
per
share
sintesi dei
in
contributi del
the
gruppo.
chat
Tali
short summary of what
saranno utili ai
contributions
relatori per
have come about
completare
in the
il
groups,
loro
and this will
lavoro,
be
che sarà
helpful for the
pubblicato
speakers to complete
congiuntamente
their work, which
sotto
will be
forma di
published
libro digitale.
as a digital book.
E così possiamo andare. E
So
grazie per
we
questo momento ricco.
go into our groups. Thank you for this
Continuiamo.
time
Va bene
together,
così,
and we
Isabel?
continue in our
Sì,
groups. Is that okay?
facciamo in questo modo, no?
Yes.
Abbiamo adesso, sono 22 minuti,
So we
sì?
have 22 minutes left,
torniamo in sala
and then we return here,
faremo una pausa di 10 minuti.
and there will
sì?
be a 10-minute
Ora
break.
ci sono anche alcuni che in diversi gruppi
So
potranno aiutarvi al coordinamento, così si deve scegliere chi prende delle note
during the
e
break, we
li
will be able to share
condividete
these
per il
notes
chat. Una volta che finisce l'incontro,
on the chat.
diciamo di questo panel, si
And once
condivide
this
per
panel
chat
meeting ends,
qui
we
del
can
Zoom.
share the
Grazie,
chat
allora
together.
buon lavoro.
Thank
Fino
you.
alle
So
16:40.
we
Dovete
reconvene for the
aggiungervi
break
voi
at
alle diverse
16:40.
sale,
You need to
sì?
add yourselves to the various language groups. Thank you.
Per lingue.
Allora, bentornati tutti. Facciamo un po' di prove per le traduzioni
So
prima
welcome
di
back. We're going to
continuare.
try again all the translations
Welcome
before
back.
going ahead with
Just
the
a little
panel. So let's
translation
check
test.
the
You are now
English
listening to the
translation.
English
Can you
language. Can you please
hear the English
confirm
translation?
if you
Could you
can
please
hear
confirm if you
English loud
can
and clear?
listen to
Thank
the
you.
English translation properly? Thank you. Can you listen to the English translation? Okay, perfect.
La traduzione al portoghese.
Now we're going to try the Portuguese translation.
Funziona? Va bene?
Is the Portuguese translation working? Okay.
Sì. Traduzione
Yes,
francese,
okay, now the
all'inglese,
French translation.
spagnolo.
Now the Spanish translation.
Okay.
Is that working? Okay, so we can
Allora,
go ahead.
per continuare, passo
So
la
perfect.
parola
To go ahead, I give the floor
a Carla Prieto,
Carla
che
Prieto.
coordinerà il secondo panel di
She will
oggi,
coordinate the
intitolato
second panel of
Comunicazione
today,
generativa e
and the topic will
cambiamenti
be
sociali. Carla, a te la
communication and social change, generative communication and social change. So Carla, the floor is yours. So thank you, Lucas, and thank you for inviting me. I hope you had a nice break, and of course we need a lot of enthusiasm for this second panel. Of course, there are many things. The first speaker for this second panel is Susana Núñez. Before presenting Susana, I know that it is a challenge. It is a challenge to say what you want to say in 8 minutes and also to speak slowly at the same time. But of course, it is a challenge, but please try and keep a good pace so that the translators can translate with no pressure. So thank you. So thank you, Susana. Hello, Susana. So Susana is a sociologist at the Gregorian University in Rome. She's also an analyst in social communication, and she graduated at the El Salvador University in Argentina. And she has done a PhD in social sciences at the Gregorian University in Rome. She's also a member of the CELAM, and she's also a member of the Institute Evangelii Gaudium of the Sophia Institute in Florence, Italy, and she has made many publications. She has published many papers. So welcome, Susanna. Thank you again. The floor is yours. So thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carla. Can you hear me? The audio is okay? Okay, perfect. So good evening, everybody. And now I would like to reflect upon the importance of the action and the importance of the research. So now I'm going to read my speech. So the title of today's speech is Relational Communication, a Fabric in Latin America. So the worldview of communication that emerges from the charism of unity, so clearly and purely transmitted by Karl Lubick in its spiritual, theological, and cultural foundations, as well as its application in narratives and practices of influence, has been and continues to be the compass of my journey. I will briefly outline how, after years focused on education and communication, this perspective became an existential reflection of my deepest personality. So it was actually an existential need to face this topic. And I am grateful to those who accompanied me on this path, understanding and even anticipating it with essential encouragement. So I embraced communication from the beginning of my academic journey, alongside studies in educommunication during the era of Pierre Babin in Europe and Francisco Gutiérrez in Latin America. Sorry, we can listen to the translation into Italian. Okay. Okay, now can you hear the translation, the Spanish translation? Okay, perfect. So we can go ahead with the speech.
Entonces, la cosmovisión en comunicación que emerge del carisma de la unidad y que en
so I
forma
could
tan
go back
clara
to the
y
beginning.
límpida recibimos de
So the
Karl
worldview of
Lubick
communication that
en
emerges
sus
from the charism of
fundamentos
unity, so
espirituales,
clearly and
teológicos,
purely transmitted
culturales,
by Karl Lubick in its
como el
spiritual, theological, and
aterrizaje en
cultural
las
foundations,
narrativas
as
y
well as its
prácticas de
application in
incidencia,
narratives and
han
practices of
sido y
influence,
son la
has
brújula
been
de mi
and
camino.
continues to be the
Expondré
compass
aquí
of my journey.
brevemente desde dónde
I briefly
presento
outline
esta
how,
síntesis de
after
ensayo
years focused on
y después de
education and
haber
communication,
transcurrido
this
años de orientación
perspective
hacia la educación
became an
y la
existential reflection
comunicación,
of my
se me
deepest
fue
personality.
revelando como reflejo todo esto existencial
Of
de mi
course,
personalidad más profunda.
today,
Agradezco a quienes
I am
acompañaron
grateful
mi camino
to those
y
who accompany me
supieron
on this
leer
path,
esto
understanding and even
y hasta
anticipating
proceder con
it
estímulos que
with
resultaron
essential encouragement.
esenciales. Pude beber la
So I
comunicación desde el
embraced
inicio de mi
communication from the beginning
camino
of my
como estudio
academic journey,
académico junto a
alongside studies in
estudios de
educommunication during the era
educomunicación
of
en la era de
Pierre
Pierre Babin
Babin
en
in Europe
Europa, en
and
Francia más
Francisco
precisamente, y de
Gutiérrez in
Francisco Gutiérrez
Latin
en América
America.
Latina. Conjunción
So
que
this
signó
combination
mi
marked my
vida por la
life,
sintonía con la
aligning
propuesta
with the
comunicativa
communicative
del
proposal
carisma
of
de
the
la unidad.
charism of unity.
Me voy a centrar
So
en
now I
lo que
will
he llamado la
focus on the
centralidad
relational
relacional
centrality.
del mensaje comunicativo
So
chiariano que fue
the
impactante
central
en mi
message of
vida.
Chiara's
Fue
communication
sin lugar a
that
duda
profoundly
la
impacted my life
relacionalidad
was
como la
undoubtedly
temática, las
relationality,
relaciones en todas sus
relationships in all
direcciones.
their
En la
directions.
ruta latinoamericana de
In the
estudios,
Latin American
lógicamente en
context of
contexto de la
communication studies,
comunicación, la
sociology,
sociología
and
y el
Christian
pensamiento
social
social
thought,
cristiano.
this
Esa ha sido un
relational
poco la
approach
ruta.
became
Hoy,
essential.
al cabo de 40
Today,
años,
after 40
puedo
years, I
constatar que la
can see
profesión
that my
me
profession
permitió
allowed
transitar
me
y generar en América
to
Latina y
generate
el
a
Caribe
wide and varied
un amplio
network
y
of
variado
deep
tejido
and
de
fruitful
vínculos
connections
profundos y
across
fecundos con
Latin
múltiples
American
personas,
Latin America and the
grupos,
Caribbean.
instituciones, colectivos y
This
movimientos
network spans
sociales
individuals,
donde
groups,
la comunicación
institutions,
se
social movements,
manifiesta
and
desde
communities
distintos
where
frentes.
communication manifests
Un
from various
tejido de unidad en la
angles.
diversidad,
It is a fabric of unity and
realidades
diversity,
algunas
connecting realities
aparentemente
that may seem
contrastantes
contrasting.
entre sí. La participación en
So,
eventos
participating
tan
in diverse
diferentes desde el
events,
Vaticano
from the
como
Vatican as a
consultora del Pontificio
consultant
Consejo de
for
las
the
Comunicaciones en su
Pontifical Council
momento,
for Social
a la
Communications,
quinta
to
conferencia
the
de
fifth
Aparecida,
conference
pero
of
también como
Aparecida, various
consultora a
leadership bodies
distintos
of the
órganos
Episcopal
dirigenciales
Council,
del
Salem,
Consejo
the
Episcopal
first
CELAN,
human rights
a
school
la
in
primera
the
escuela de
Amazon,
derechos humanos en la Amazonia, a
and
las
then
instancias
also
de gestación de las redes
the
territoriales
formation
de
of
América
territorial
Latina y el
networks across
Caribe,
Latin America and the
al
Caribbean,
nacimiento de la
and the
red que
birth of the
recorre el
network
continente
advocating
sobre el
for
acceso a la
access to
tierra y
land
al
and
agua hacia
water
una fraternidad
toward a possible
posible,
fraternity,
o la
and also
caminata
the
con el
journey with
naciente
the
Instituto
newly established
Universitario
Sophia
Sofía
University
en América
Institute in
Latina
Latin
con su
America
innovador método
with
de
its
estudio, me han
innovative study
permitido
method
constatar
have
la
all allowed
posibilidad
me to
de
witness the
una
possibility
comunicación
of
fundada en la
communication
relacionalidad
grounded
y
in
que genera
relationality, fostering
relacionalidad
multiple
múltiple.
relationships.
Llave de oro de la
So, of
comunicación
course,
relacional que he podido constatar,
what
experimentar,
is the golden key of
investigar
relational
y
communication that I have discovered
caminar
and
en la
found out?
acción. Las prácticas
Well,
enfocadas desde
practices
la
focused on
relacionalidad han
relationality
tenido
have
un
had a
distintivo,
distinctive
una
feature,
llave
a
maestra
master
para abrir
key
las
that
puertas
opens the
del
hearts of
corazón de los
interlocutors,
interlocutores, de
institutions,
las
and also
instituciones y
helps unravel
desentrañar los
conflicts.
conflictos. Y han sido no solo el
This key has been not
conocimiento,
only knowledge,
sino
but
el
also the recognition
reconocimiento
of
del
the
otro,
other,
de su
their
persona,
person,
en su dignidad y
dignity,
su ser y
being,
hacer,
and
el
actions.
primer paso a
It
una
is the first
libre
step towards a
posibilidad de
free possibility
relacionamiento.
of relationship.
He visto desde el
I have seen
reconocimiento
that
la
through
valoración por la
recognition
vida,
and valuing the
la
lives and paths of
trayectoria, sea
both
de
individuals and
personas como de
institutions, the
instituciones,
greatest openings
las mayores
occur.
aperturas donde se pueden
And it is
sepultar las
important to
envidias,
open our
las
hearts.
competencias,
Here,
los celos
competition and also professional
profesionales.
jealousy can be buried.
Florecen desde el
Instead,
reconocimiento
free,
relaciones
fresh
libres,
relationships
frescas, de
flourish,
recíproca estima y
grounded in mutual
valoración, donde
appreciation,
las
where
relaciones pueden
interactions are lived
vivenciarse sin
without prejudice
prejuicios,
or
sin
resentment.
resquemores y donde no se trata de
So,
relaciones fundadas
of
en la
course,
suma de las partes,
that is
sino como muy
not
bien lo
merely a sum of
evidencian hoy las
parts,
ciencias
but as
sociales,
highlighted by social sciences
comunicación,
today,
antropología,
communication, anthropology,
psicología
sociology, social
social,
psychology,
se da una
a
real
true
tercera
third presence
presencia, un
emerges,
tercero
a
superador de las
superior
propuestas,
third
las
element in
sugerencias,
proposals,
las ideas.
suggestions, and
Desde
ideas.
la espiritualidad
From the
bíblica
biblical
iniciada en el
spirituality
carisma de la unidad,
evident in the charism
podemos
of unity, we
reconocerlo
can
en la
recognize
expresión
this
cuando
in
Jesús
Jesus'
dice,
words when he
porque
says,
donde
"For where two
están
or three
dos
are
o tres
gathered in my
congregados en
name,
mi nombre,
there
allí
I
estoy
am
yo en
among
medio
them."
de ellos. Sintonía ingeniería, ciencias sociales,
So here,
expresión del carisma de la unidad.
of course, we need to
La
express this
academia
charism
desde el
of
diálogo,
unity. Then academia through dialogue, the other topic. My academic practice in various settings has always led me through relationality and dialogue to observe that even in classrooms of 120 students, surrounded by posters of revolutionary leaders, for instance, at the University of Buenos Aires, when students are placed at the center of relationality with a method of dialogue that brings forth the deepest aspects of both teacher and student, there is an infinite desire to delve into existential depths. So I have witnessed the same in teaching across Latin America with groups of over 20 nationalities with groups of over 20 nationalities in educational programs. So relational communication in this context has led a multi-ethnic, multicultural group to a full experience of interculturality, capable of fostering real, affective and effective fraternity, both in person and digitally, in understanding problems and exploring possibilities for transformation and impact. Then communication are protest when necessary. From the same relational perspective, I must mention the moments when communication has taken the form of strong communal experiences of protest when reality demanded it. So as Chiara Lubick highlighted at Net1 in 2000, protest is sometimes necessary. And it is important to say what is going on in our reality with a loud voice. I had just experiences where conflict in communication was evident. As a consultant during the 5th conference of Aparecida, a news agency spread deeply biased false information about the results of the final document vote. Then we engaged in dialogue with the agency director, proposing retraction and offering solutions. And ultimately, it was necessary to inform the organizers of Aparecida about the agency's conduct. And time confirmed our position as the agency's journalistic practices were publicly denounced. Similarly, within the land network, we supported communicative efforts denouncing the land grabs by a sugar mill in the Dominican Republic, which destroyed the properties of small farmers and even bulldozed their fragile homes. So relational dialogic communication is also committed to human rights and peace, always striving for truth. Then another topic I would like to point out is the narratives from the heart of people and communities. So of course, it is all the fruit of research. Relationality has instilled in me a deep desire to listen, allowing the experiences of others to resonate in our hearts, marveling at God's actions and the paths of individuals and institutions. So this inspired me to collect diverse narratives, producing television programs for years and testimonial series, which have managed to highlight life, identity and growth, and also Christian values, even amid apparent adversities. Today, I continue in the same direction, serving as the coordinator of Ciudad Nueva Interamericana, a publication representing 17 countries across our continent. Sorry, Susanna. Okay, we have finished our 8 minutes, so I'll go ahead just with the last point. I'll go ahead with the communicators in community topic. So, of course, it is important to, before concluding, I wish to share a key element in my communication journey contributed by Lubick, the concept of cells of environment. These are founded on the principle, love one another as I have loved you. This reality lived out in one's environment generates the presence of Jesus among people, expanding his action. This communicative fire based on his commandment enables more accurate diagnosis, multiple perspectives, and an understanding of realities in the light
comprometido
of
lo
the
profético.
gospel,
Debo ser
leading to practices
particularmente
consistent
agradecida
with
porque
service and
donde no
generating new
encontré una
committed
célula de
and
ambiente
prophetic
ya
actions.
constituida, la pude
I'm especially
generar.
grateful
Y
because where
ese
I
ha
did not
sido
find an existing
y
cell
es el camino
environment,
de la
I
comunicación
was able to
comunitaria
create
que la
one.
vida me ha
This has been
regalado
and continues to
a
be the
mí y a
path of
otros
communal
muchos.
communication that life has
No
granted to
digo
me
dónde
and to
estoy
many
ahora.
others.
Yo había puesto hoy la
Of
comunicación
course,
en mí sigue. Lo corto para dar paso a Carla y no
is
extenderme más.
okay.
Muchísimas
So I
gracias.
conclude here my speech and thank you very much.
Grazie,
So I give
Susanna,
the floor
grazie.
back to
Faccio
Carla. So
così.
thank you,
Sento
Susanna. Thanks,
questa
Emilian.
necessità di applauso anche.
Thanks, Emilian. Of course,
Ma
we should clap our
grazie
hands,
Susanna
but
per questo momento.
we cannot.
E
But
scusa
thank you,
che
Susanna,
ho
really.
fatto
So
questo.
thank you, and my apologies for interrupting your speech.
Grazie. Se va
Thank
bene
you.
per le seguenti,
If that's okay for
possiamo
you,
fare un segno, no? Di farli un po' così.
if that's okay
Sì,
for you, we can
sì, vediamo
just wave the
che già
hand
sta
when
finendo il tempo, va bene?
the
Ok,
8
benissimo.
minutes
Ok. La
time that is given
seguente
to
è
each
nostra
speaker is coming to
cara
the end.
Cristina
Okay,
Montoya e il suo tema
now we have
è
Cristina Montoya, and
Conjugarte, un processo di comunicazione
the title of his speech
generativa
is
per la
Conjugarte, a
trasformazione sociale
generative
di Medellin.
communication process for social transformation
Cristina
in
ha
Medellin.
fatto il dottorato di ricerca in
So
scienze della
Christina has done a
comunicazione alla
PhD
Pontificia
in
Università
Science of
Salesiana di Roma.
Communication at
È
the
anche
Pontifical
docente e
University in
ricercatrice
Rome.
universitaria.
She's also a
La sua
professor
linea
and
di
she's also a
ricerca
researcher.
è la
And
comunicazione
she
generativa
works
e
on
comunicazione per il
the
cambiamento
generative
sociale,
communication,
in
and she
rapporto con
wants
diverse
to
realtà sociali contemporanee
promote a
come
social change from that
polarizzazione,
perspective.
migrazione e divario
And she studies
digitale.
polarization, migration,
È
and also the digital
autrice
presence.
anche
She's
di
also
diverse
author
e tantissime
of
pubblicazioni.
many
Benvenuta
different
Cristina.
publications. So thank you and
Grazie
welcome here,
Carla,
Christina. So
e
thank
grazie
you.
a tutti.
Thank you, Carla.
Veramente sono molto grata
And
di essere in
thank
questo
you.
spazio e di aver potuto
I'm very happy to be here,
sentire e
and I'm
raccogliere la
grateful
vostra
because, of course, it
esperienza
is an honor
verso
to
cammino.
listen to all your experiences.
Vorrei
It is very
condividere lo
interesting to listen
schermo,
to your different
vediamo
backgrounds.
se
I would like to share my
riesco.
screen, if that's possible. Is that possible to share my screen?
Non so
I'll
se me
try
lo
and share
potete
my screen.
permettere.
Can you give me the permission to
Ok.
share my screen? Because I'm not allowed to.
Puoi farlo, Chris? Sì, adesso. Vedete lo schermo? Sì.
Okay, now can you see the screen? Perfect.
Sì, si vede benissimo.
There
Bene,
we can see
grazie.
that properly. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Allora, come appunto sottolineava Susanna ed è la
As
mia
Susanna has said,
convinzione anche profonda
I have this
che la
conviction
costruzione di
that it
vincoli,
is
di nessi e
important to
relazioni
build
sociali
bonds
sane
within
è
our
la
social
più grande
fabric.
sfida, la domanda
But that's a
aperta per la
challenge, of course. It is a
comunicazione
great
del
question
nostro e di tutti i tempi.
for
Ed è
our
stata anche la moda
present
del
time
mio
communication.
lavoro
And of course,
professionale e della
I have
mia
worked a lot
ricerca
on
in
that.
questi
I've
anni.
done a lot of research on those
E
topics.
questo mi ha portato ad approfondire
And this has led me to
inizialmente
initially
il
explore
rapporto di
the
interdipendenza
interdependent relationship between
così presente,
communication
così
and
forte che
social
c'è tra
relationship, because
comunicazione
this is a
e
very
relazione
important
sociale.
relationship.
Qual è il peso che la comunicazione ha
So what
nella
is
costruzione di
the
relazioni
weight of
sociali, del
social
tessuto
communication
sociale?
in the construction of the social fabric?
E facendo questa ricerca
So
mi
thanks to
sono
this research,
trovata con un
I have
concetto, ma soprattutto una
found a
realtà
concept, a
che
very
mi ha attirato
interesting realm
fortemente
that has
e che
attracted me
trovavo anche
in a very
vissuta
deep way.
attorno a me,
And I have
specialmente in
seen
ambiti
this
illuminati dal
concept also
femminile,
around me.
che sono azioni comunicative
That is
generative,
communicative,
cioè
generative
azioni di
actions.
comunicazione
They are
in grado di far
communication
emergere
actions that
relazioni
can
vitali, di dare
give
vita al tessuto
place to
sociale.
vital relationships to
Per
build the
questo
social
mi sono
fabric.
poi
For
dedicata
that
per un
reason,
certo
then,
tempo
I have dedicated
all'approfondimento
myself to
teorico
delve
su questo
into
tema e a
this
metterlo a
topic in a
confronto
very
con altri
theoretical way,
logicamente
and
in
then I have tried
corsi,
and
monografie, seminari. Però
widened
queste
this
idee
perspective, of
certamente
course.
hanno bisogno di un
But these ideas,
confronto,
of course,
di uno
needs a
studio di
constant dialogue.
realtà
They need a
e
constant
quindi una
study upon
ricerca
reality.
empirica.
And so
Ed è
there
questo che
must be an
faccio in
empiric
questo momento e
research.
che in
That's what I'm doing
particolare
now,
oggi condivido con
and
voi.
I want to
Dico
share that
solo
with
che
you today.
intendiamo come azioni comunicative
Of course, when we
generative
talk about
azioni che
generative
possono
communicative
essere
actions, we're
linguistiche
talking
o non
about
linguistiche,
language or
che fanno
non-language
come di
actions
dono
that
iniziale
There are a gift to generate or regenerate a relationship, and that feature is that the effect of these actions is the production of relational goods.
In
this case, I'm going to talk about Conjugarte. Conjugarte is a project, is an initiative that was born 6 months ago, maybe 7 months ago, because of course it was born in Medellin, you know the city, and this city has been considered as one of the most violent cities all around the world. And it has been considered as a city with no future. Of course, from a town, there's a question. Looking at the different leaders and looking at the different communities, some leaders have had the ability to transform and also to oppose to violence, starting from the art and starting from the culture. And somehow, this project is just one question. What would happen if we all united? And so we need a dialogue to answer this question. So there's a whole process behind, and we want to be an example of a generative communication. Okay. So the first results of our study, both thanks to focus groups and interviews, have been very interesting results. So we have seen a very interesting turnout into the process, and we have seen that there has been a transformation in all the narratives about violence among people. So sometimes we tend to stigmatize our narratives, and the culture has contributed in that process. And there has been an increase in the ability to face the cultural assumptions, to change also the culture to go towards new future horizons, with a good involvement of the others to go towards new action that leads to deep transformation into our society. So, this project was born thanks to the collaboration among people. And of course, this project wants to be a driving force to go towards a better transformation. I want to repeat that. At the beginning, there was just an action, there was just an initiative, there was just a proposal on the table, so that some human relationships could be generated and regenerated within that context. What is evident is that there's a gradual construction of an unprecedented reality thanks to the dialogue. So there's a major ability to resolve conflicts, and there are new realities that are created thanks to the dialogue among all the different actors. So we give value to the meeting, to the encounter as a communicative event. This has led to the creation of communities, and this has also contributed to consolidate some human relationships. So there are some relational goods as trust, cooperation, friendship, and also happiness and reciprocity. And of course, for us, it is very important to offer a model of reference, a model of leadership that could inspire other people. But this model must be anchored on the value of cooperation. Of course, in Medellin, we have a different model that is commonly spread, but we want to involve leaders and social actors that want to offer a new point of reference for all the people. So let's say that we are at the beginning of this path, and we are seeing that when we want to work on something, of course we need to be creative, and we need to look at the different stakeholders and actors through a conversational process.
l'inedito possibile, come
And of
direbbe
course,
Paulo
we
Freire,
need
quel
we need to go
terzo
an
che è una
unprecedented
nuova relazione sociale,
reality,
la comunicazione
fostering the creation of a
gioca un
new
ruolo
reality.
fondamentale
Of course,
nella
communication
costruzione di
plays a
tessuto
crucial role
sociale
in the
e quindi la
construction of the social
sostenibilità
fabric
relazionale del
and
nostro pianeta.
in the
Grazie.
relational sustainability of our world, of our planet. So thank you for your attention.
Grazie Cristina, anche
Thank
un
you,
applauso
Cristina.
virtuale.
And
E un abbraccio per te, ma grazie per questo
I'm
modulo
clapping my hands even though I
interessante.
we cannot all clap our hands.
Per
So
tutti.
thank you.
Allora andremo con
So now I give the floor
nostra
to
seguente
our
partecipante,
next speaker.
esperta,
She's an
Maddalena
expert and
Maltese.
she's Maddalena
Il
Maltese.
suo tema è raccontare la
She's going
pace
to
non
talk
vende.
about the peace. And
Lei
her
è
title
una
is
giornalista corrispondente
Telling
da
Stories
New
About
York
Peace Doesn't Sell.
per
She's a
Radicor
correspondent from New
Sole
York
24 Ore.
for the Il Sole
Collabora
24
con
Ore.
varie
She
testate in
collaborates with
Italia e
many
negli
newspapers
Stati
in
Uniti.
Italy and also in the
È
United
anche
States.
consulente
She's also a
per la
consultant
fondazione
for
Mario
the
Diana e
Mario
Popolare
Diana
Media
Foundation,
negli Stati Uniti.
and
È appassionata di dialogo
she's very
interculturale
passionate
e
about intercultural dialogue
interreligioso.
and
È
interreligious, interfaith
ambasciatrice
dialogue.
di Religions
And
for Peace International
she
e
belongs to
rappresenta
Religions
la
for Peace
ONG
International, as she represents
Nuova
the
Umanità
NGO
al
New Humanity,
Multi-Faith
Nuova Humanità,
Advisory
at the
Council
Multi-Faith
della
Advisory
ONU.
Council of the United
Benvenuta.
Nations. So welcome here, and
Grazie,
thank you.
grazie di questa lunga presentazione, grazie ai relatori
Thank you
che
for
mi
this
hanno
presentation, and
preceduto
thank you to all the other
per i
speakers,
tanti messaggi e i
and
tanti
thank you for all the
stimoli che
messages and
hanno
for
inviato.
the
Non so
many
se è
topics.
possibile cominciare questa relazione in maniera interattiva.
I'd like to
Vorrei
begin in an
chiedere
interactive way.
di
I would like
scrivere
to
nella
ask whether you
chat a
can
tutti
put
voi che
in
state
the chat, put
partecipando,
everybody
chi è che ha
to
vinto
put
il
in the
Nobel
chat
per la
those
pace
who
nel
won the
2024.
Nobel Prize for Peace in 2024.
Ecco, mentre lo scrivete senza guardare su Google,
As you
perché
do
questa è
this
la
without
grande
Googling it
sfida,
up, this is
vi
the great
racconto
challenge. I
qualcosa
am going
di
to
come la
tell you
pace in
something
questo
about how
momento,
peace at this
ecco,
point in time,
un ente giapponese,
the Japanese organization,
sì, il gruppo
we
si
have all the
chiama
answers.
Nihon Indakyo, non una donna
Nihanun
dell'est
Dakyo,
asiatico.
it's an
Ecco, solo per
Eastern
dirvi che
Asian
anche una
lady.
notizia così recente
And
come quella del
just
Nobel per la
a
pace
recent
non
item
è
of news,
stata
such as the Nobel
particolarmente
Prize
diffusa e non è
for
stata
Peace, was
vincente.
not
Prova
a
che la
winning
pace non vende,
news
non ha un mercato.
item and was not
Ecco, vi
winning. That means
spiego che
that
non
peace doesn't win,
sempre
it
è
doesn't have
così.
a market, but it's not
Il
always
23
like that.
settembre
On
ho
the
scritto un
23rd
messaggio a
of
un amico
September, I
libanese.
wrote
Leggeva dei
a message
bombardamenti al
to a
confine tra Libano e
Lebanese friend. I was
Israele
reading about
e
the bombing
conoscendo quanto
on
le
the border
distanze
between Lebanon
sono
and Israel, and
piccole nel
knowing
suo
how
paese, ho
distances
pensato
are
alla sua
small in her
casa, alla sua
area, I
famiglia,
thought about her
alle
home and her
minacce che
family, and I
stavano
thought that they
subendo. Non ho
were
dormito.
under
La
threat.
risposta al
I
mio
couldn't
messaggio è
sleep,
stata
but
una
the
lunga
answer
lettera di
was a long
domande
letter
sul
of
perché di un
questions
altro
on why
conflitto,
another
sul perché i
conflict,
suoi bambini
on
non
why her
potevano più
children
andare a
could no longer
scuola,
go to school,
domande su
and
partire,
question
restare,
on leaving,
domande sulla
going,
pace e
and
domande su
questions
Dio.
on peace and questions on
Quella
God.
lettera
That letter
il 13
on
ottobre,
the
cioè quasi
13th
20
of
giorni
October, that's
dopo,
nearly
è
20 days
diventato un articolo
after,
che
became
ho
an
spedito a
article
diversi media
which I first
italiani, ad
sent to some
alcuni anche
Italian media
statunitensi
and
e
some
infine anche a un
American ones,
quotidiano
and finally
economico e
even
finanziario.
to a
La
financial
storia di
daily
Marianne ha
newspaper.
convinto 3 direttori
Marianne's
di 3
story
testate
convinced
diverse,
3 directors
separate
of
da un
3
oceano,
different
a
news
pubblicarla.
outlets
La sua storia
separated
di
by an ocean to
pace
be
ha
published.
venduto
Her
più copie di
story
alcuni
of peace
quotidiani,
has
ha
sold
prodotto più click in
more
alcuni
copies, has
siti
produced
web
more
e ha spinto
clicks in
diverse
websites, and
persone
has
a
encouraged
chiedere come
many
poter
people
aiutare la popolazione
to ask
libanese in
how to
questo
help the
durissimo
Lebanese
momento.
population at this very
Ho
difficult
cominciato questo
time.
intervento con una
I
storia,
began with a
perché noi
story
esseri umani
because,
siamo
as human
creature che
beings, we are
raccontiamo
creatures
storie,
who tell
siamo
stories.
affascinati dalle
We are
storie.
fascinated
Anche
by
Chiara
stories.
Lubick, che ha
Even Chiara
ispirato i
Lubik,
valori di
who
Net One,
inspired
l'organizzatore
the
appunto di questa
values of Net One,
conferenza, ha
this
sempre
conference,
considerato le
and
storie
their
dei
organizers, has
ponti
always
che
considered
legavano le persone,
stories
dei
as
ponti di
bridges
dialogo, dei ponti di
linking
pace.
people for linking people
Gli
in
storie
dialogue
sono un
and
importante
peace.
strumento di
Stories are an
cambiamento
important
personale e
tool
sociale,
for
così lo
personal and social
definite anche
change. This is the
l'Istituto
way
Internazionale
the
di Studi
International
sulla Pace di
Institute of
Stoccolma.
studies on peace in Stockholm
Eppure
define
sembra
them.
che le storie non
Yet
abbiano
it seems
mercato.
that stories have no
Vi
market.
racconto in
Why?
breve
Let me tell you
5
briefly
caratteristiche dello
5
storytelling della
characteristics of
pace, la
peace
fatica che le storie
storytelling
di pace
and the
fanno
effort that these
ad
stories
affermarsi nello
make
scenario dei
in
media
coming
e
about,
gli
coming to the
spazi
front
ancora
in media
liberi che possono
scenarios,
essere
and the
occupati
free
dagli
spaces which
storyteller di
might
pace.
be
Lo
organized and
storytelling di
occupied by peace
pace è
storytellers.
potente per 5
Peace
ragioni.
storytelling has
1.
5
Sa collegare
different
persone
reasons why it's
reali e
powerful.
culture,
One, it can
promuove
connect persons and
empatia,
cultures, promote
trascendere i
empathy,
confini
and go
nazionali
beyond
e
national
legare le
borders
persone.
and link people together.
2. Sa
2.
umanizzare il
They
conflitto.
humanize conflict.
Parliamo di
We speak
persone
about
che sono state
persons,
colpite
those who
e
are
soffrono
impacted by a
e ci
conflict, those who suffer,
immedesimiamo nelle loro
and
storie.
we
Ci medesimiamo anche nelle
take
storie di
part
chi
in their
prova a
stories, and
costruire.
those even who
In questo
try
tempo
to
di conflitti
rebuild in
in
this
Medio
time
Oriente sono
of
emerse delle
conflict in the
figure
Middle
di cui
East,
poco abbiamo sentito parlare,
persons who
gruppi
we
come
heard
Parent Circle,
little
come
about
Combats for Peace,
have come
che
about,
cercano
like
appunto di
parents
costruire
circle,
ponti
like
di
combats for
incontro in
peace,
un
who
contesto di
try to
guerra.
build points of
Ispirano
encounter in a
all'azione,
context of
come è
war. They
successo
inspire
per chi
to
ha letto la
action,
storia di
as
Marianne.
has happened for those who read the
Aumentano la
story of Marianne.
consapevolezza
They
in
increase
tutti noi di
awareness
cosa
in
può
all of
scatenare
us
una
as
guerra
to
e di
what might
cosa
bring
può
about a
costruire
war
pace.
and what can build peace.
Spingono alla
They encourage
riconciliazione.
us to reconciliation,
Eppure questi
and
valori
yet
sembra che
these
non hanno
values
spazio
don't seem to
nei
have
grandi
space
media.
on the media.
Perché? A motivo
Why
di
is
vari
this?
alibi.
There are
Uno è
various alibis for
hanno
this.
più valore
One
giornalistico i
is
disastri e gli
disasters
scandali
and
perché
scandals have
attraggono di
greater
più
journalistic
e
value.
quindi
They
portano
attract
immediatamente a
more
una reazione
and
del
they
pubblico.
immediately bring
L'altro
a
alibi è che il
reaction.
pubblico
The
non è
other alibi
interessato e
is
questa è
that
una
the
percezione
audience,
che
the
si
general public, is not
autoalimenta.
interested, and this is
Siamo
a
più interessati
self-fulfilling
ai drammi che alle
prophecy.
storie di
We are
pace.
more
Non
interested
sono
in
convinta.
tragedies
La
than
storia
peace,
di
but I'm
Rachel
not
Polin,
convinced
il cui
about this because the
figlio
story about Rachel
è stato
Polin,
Hirsch, è
whose
stato appunto rapito il
whose
7
son
ottobre
Hirsch
scorso, ha
was
riempito
kidnapped in
tantissime
October
pagine dei
and arrested,
media
filled many pages of
statunitensi e non
the
solo,
American
perché
media
era
and
una storia
beyond,
autentica.
because it
Era
was
la
an
storia di una
authentic
donna
story.
che
It
ha
was the
saputo
story
raccontare la
of a woman
sofferenza non
who
solo
was
da un
able to
lato,
tell the story
ma
of
anche
suffering not
dall'altro
only
lato,
on a
e che la vita
one-sided
aveva valore
part of the argument,
indipendentemente
but
dalla
both, because
nazionalità.
life had value
L'altro alibi è
independently
che non
of
ci sono
nationality.
abbastanza
The other
risorse
one
perché lo
is that there are
storytelling
not
di
enough
pace
resources
richiede
because peace
approfondimenti,
storytelling
richiede
requires
soldi,
greater
richiede
deepening,
viaggi e
money,
quindi è una
travel, and
giustificazione per
therefore
non
this is an
occuparsene.
alibi in
Spesso
order
sono
not to deal
storie
with it.
complesse, non si
Often
può
they are complex
raccontare
stories.
la
You can't
storia, ad
just
esempio, di Natalia
tell
di
the
Kiev
story of
in
Natalia
un
from Kiev
quartiere
in
particolare della sua
a
città senza
special
tutta la
district of her
complessità
city
che porta
without
il suo
all
popolo,
the
che porta
complexity that her
diciamo
people
la relazione
um,
anche con quello che in questo
has
momento
and
è il
entails
nemico
in
che li ha
terms of
attaccati.
relationships with the enemy
I
who
conflitti
attacked
vendono
them.
di più. Vi assicuro che non è
Conflicts
così. Ho
sell more.
incontrato un
I assure you
documentarista
this
di
is not
Kiev
true. I
alcuni
met a
mesi fa
documentary
che ha
maker in
cominciato una
Kiev
raccolta
a few
fondi
months
proprio
ago who
sulla storia
began
di un
a
ex
collection of
militare
funds to tell the story
dell'Azerbaigian
of a
che in
former
Ucraina
soldier
sta
of
aiutando
Azerbaijan who
migliaia di
is helping
persone a
thousands of
ricollocarsi
people
fuori dai
in
territori di
Ukraine
guerra.
to position
Ecco,
themselves
sono arrivati i
outside
soldi per la
the
sua
war-torn
storia e il suo
areas. The money
documentario
has
è
arrived.
stato
His
presentato anche in
documentary
diversi
was
festival del
presented in a
documentario e
range
del
of
cinema.
documentary festivals.
Come le storie di pace possono avere un mercato
How
oggi?
can these stories have a
Possono
market
averlo
today?
attraverso i cosiddetti
This might
influencer di
happen
pace e questi
through
possiamo
peace
essere tutti
influencers,
noi,
and we can all
comunicatori
be
e
peace
giornalisti.
influencers, communicators, and
Instagram e
journalists.
social media hanno aperto
Instagram,
canali
social
di
media
comunicazione
have
che ci
opened
consentono di
communication
raggiungere il
channels,
pubblico,
allowing us
se
to
volete,
reach their
scavalcando anche i
audiences,
big
if you
media.
like, by
Sono reduce da una
overtaking
lezione da qualche
bigger media
giorno e vi posso
outlets. I have
assicurare che
come
l'analisi in
from
questi giorni è proprio concentrata su
the
questo, sui grandi
from
influencer,
a
sui piccoli influencer che hanno
conference
cambiato la
focused on
percezione del
large and small
paese.
influencers who
Vi
have
voglio
changed the perception of the country, of the elections. One of them is called Peace Direct, Platform for Dialogue, which connects persons online coming from all over the world who deal with the construction of peace and gives a lot of space to young people. I am referring to all of you here from Net One, and I would like you to become influencers for peace and perhaps create a contest like 100 Journalists for Peace, asking everybody for a video, a story, something, Instagram publications, and so on. And I think that all that we have spoken about at this event can also be a good starting point. I'm also thinking that we need to invest more in training journalists and influencers when it comes to narratives of peace, and we can certainly do this by cooperating with other organizations. I met one, Catalyst for Peace, who helped to develop peace stories. To tell stories and share stories is the best peace mechanism that can exist. This is what Kirti Jayakumar thinks. She is an advocate and an activist for human rights, and she is passionate about peace storytelling. Sharing stories and stories of peace transform peace in a possibility for the great ability that connecting human being has in terms of storytelling and to promote encounter. We can all tell these stories, stories of peace as a way to serve the world, as a way to search, even in darkness and in error, small lights which keep hope alive. So, best wishes to all peace influencers who are linked up here. Thank you, Maddalena. I am impressed by the fact that we can all be influencers of peace. Thank you very much. And we continue with the next specialist, Luis Enrique Marquez, with the fraternity as a criterion of newsworthiness, if we understand Portuguese correctly. So you will explain all this to us. Luis is a journalist and a historian, and he holds a doctorate in communication at the Faculty of Icaster in São Paulo. Also a doctorate in history for the Paulista University and a master's in communication at UNESCO. He is also a member of the research group Communication and Religion of the Brazilian Society of Interdisciplinary Study on Intercom Communication. He is head editor of Città Nuova magazine in Brazil. Thank you, Luis, and welcome.
Olá, me escutam? Sim? Ok, obrigado.
Hello, can you hear me?
Eu agradeço a oportunidade.
And I would like to thank everybody for this
Vou falar em
opportunity
português,
of speaking
que é a
in
língua que eu sei
Portuguese,
mais ou menos.
which is the language I am better able to
Muito bem.
express
O
myself.
tema é fraternidade como critério
The
de
topic is
noticiabilidade.
fraternity as a criterion of
O jornalismo
newsworthiness.
no Ocidente,
Journalism
sobretudo,
in the West,
segundo o modelo norte-americano,
especially according to the North
sempre
American
teve a
model,
pretensão de ser espelho
has always expected to be
da
the mirror of
realidade.
reality.
De acordo com Felipe Pena, ao contrário,
According
esse
to
jornalismo
Felipe Pena, quite the opposite.
que
This
tende a pretensão à
journalism,
imparcialidade, objetividade e neutralidade,
which
antes a construção social
is
de uma
or
suposta
talks
realidade.
about the qualities
Uma
having the
vez que a
features of
notícia, o produto
impartiality,
jornalístico por excelência,
is actually building a
constitui
parallel reality, because the news, the
enunciado
product of journalism par excellence, is an
sujeito a uma série de
description
operações e
of
pressões sociais.
and is subject to a series
A
of
perspectiva
social
desse autor
pressures and
corresponde a um modelo
operations.
teórico do
The
newsmaking,
outlook
cujo
of this
principal
author is in
pressuposto
line with the
é que a imprensa
theoretical
não
model of
reflete a
newsmaking,
realidade,
whose
mas
main
ajuda a
tenet is
construí-la.
that the press does not reflect
Pena
reality but
afirma
helps
que
to
uma
build
das
it.
práticas centrais pela
Pena
qual se ocupa esse
states
modelo
that one of
teórico
the
é
main
a
practices of
noticiabilidade,
this theoretical model
assim
is
definida por ele,
newsworthiness,
conjunto de
which
critérios,
he
operações e
defines
instrumentos
as
para
a
escolher
togetherness of
entre inúmeros
criteria,
fatos uma
operations, and
quantidade
tools
limitada
in
de
order to
notícias.
choose a limited quantity of
A
news
noticiabilidade
items,
é negociada por
and
repórteres,
newsworthiness is
editores,
negotiated
diretores
by
e outros
journalists,
atores do processo
editors,
produtivo, na
directors,
redação.
and other actors in the production
Sua
process
aplicação
in the
baseia-se
newsroom.
nos valores notícia,
The
que são
application
os
is
tais
based on the
critérios e
value of
operações
news,
usados para definir
which are
quais
the criteria
acontecimentos
and the
são
operations used in
significativos e
order to define
interessantes
which
para serem
events are
transformados em notícia.
significant and interesting
Costumam ser
enough to be
considerados
transformed into news.
valores notícia,
The
isto é,
value
critérios
of
segundo os
news,
quais um fato
i.e.,
é
the
eleito à
criteria
condição de
based on
notícia em
which an
detrimento
event
dos
is
demais.
chosen
Impacto,
for news compared to
apelo
others, are
emocional,
usually considered
conflito,
the impact,
atualidade,
the emotional
proximidade,
call,
proeminência
conflict,
e o inusitado.
currency,
Mesmo numa
closeness,
avaliação superficial,
prominence,
é
and how
possível
unusual it
perceber
is. Even
que
in
esses e
a
outros valores notícias
superficial evaluation, it's
similares
easy to
tendem
see
a
how
evidenciar
these values
acontecimentos
will
cujo
tend
apelo a
to
reações
highlight
instintivas do ser
events
humano,
which
como
appeal
a
to
violência e o sexo,
instinctive human
se
reactions,
considerarmos
such
o
as
impacto
violence
e o
or
conflito,
sex,
a
and
simples
the
curiosidade,
impact of a
inusitado, ao
conflict.
sensacionalismo,
Sometimes they just
apelo emocional ou a
call for the
paradigmas
sensational
socioculturais
curiosity
baseados na
or
hierarquização das pessoas,
socio-cultural paradigms
conforme sua
based
posição
on the
política ou
hierarchization
social.
of
Notícias
persons
que têm
based
como
on their
pressuposto
political
apenas
or
a
social
proeminência,
position.
isto é,
News
a
which
projeção
is based
política
only
ou
on
social de
prominence,
certas
on how
pessoas,
loud they are,
assim
on the
consideradas
social and political
celebridades.
projection,
Com
certain
efeito,
persons
os
who are
meios de
considered to
comunicação
be
tendem a violar o
celebrities,
direito do
in brief.
cidadão de conhecer de forma mais coerente a
In
própria realidade
so
dos
they
acontecimentos,
tend
reduzindo a
to
notícia a um espetáculo
change the
cujo
way
consumo
in
se
which
assemelha
people come
a
to
de um
fruition,
produto de
changing the news
entretenimento,
into a
deixando
spectacle, a
escapar ao
show
leitor,
where it
ouvinte
is similar to an
ou telespectador
entertainment
a
item,
compreensão sobre o
leaving the
contexto
listener, the
em que
viewer,
se deu o fato,
unable
ou
to
limitando
understand
a
the
interpretação da
context in which
realidade
this event
a
has taken
pontos de
place, or
vista
limiting the
incompletos,
interpretation of
quando não
reality from an incomplete
inconsistentes.
point of view, or sometimes
Considerando,
they
pois,
are in
essa
complete
tendência como um
contradiction
fato
with one
irreversível
another.
e levando-se
Considering this
em conta
tendency
que,
as an
no processo
irreversible
de
fact
construção
and
da
bearing in
notícia,
mind that
seja
in the
natural que
process of building
jornalistas
the item of news,
e
it
outros
is natural
comunicadores
that
sociais
journalists and
necessitem
other
tomar como
social
parâmetros
communicators
certos
must
critérios
adopt certain criteria as
para
parameters in
realizarem
order
o
to
próprio trabalho,
undertake
cabe à
their
imprensa a
work, to do their
coragem para
work.
apontar para outros
It
valores
is the
notícia
task of
que
the press
sejam
to
não só
have
de
the
interesse
courage
público,
to
como
indicate
atendam
other
às
values
legítimas
of news, which are
necessidades de
not only
apelo
of
junto a
public
leitores,
interest, but they also
ouvintes e
satisfy the
telespectadores,
legitimate
naturalmente
needs
internautas.
of the
A
viewers
fraternidade
and
pode ser desses novos
online
critérios.
surfers.
Ninguém fala da
Fraternity could be one
fraternidade
of these
da
criteria.
comunicação,
Nobody
menos
talks
ainda da
about
fraternidade da
fraternity in
comunicação
communication,
jornalística,
less
adverte
about fraternity
Savagnoni.
of journalistic
Esse autor, no entanto,
communication,
aposta que essa
as
prática seja possível
the
e,
author,
nesse
however, believes that
sentido,
this practice
aponta para
is
requisitos
possible,
que
and in this sense indicates requisites which are considered to be fundamental so that for this to take place. One is the following:
que possam ferir a
that
dignidade,
news
a
or
segurança,
images
a
that
serenidade
might
ou outros valores
compromise the
intrínsecos das
serenity, the
pessoas,
safety, or the
seja
dignity
daquelas
of
a
every
que as
human
notícias e
person
imagens se referem,
are
seja daquelas a
the
quem elas se
ones
dirigem. Uma comunicação jornalística pode ser rigorosamente
are
verdadeira,
should
mas
not be
pode-se
circulated.
avaliar que é mais justo não
Journalistic
divulgá-la.
communication can be rigorously
Há ainda
true,
outras
but it
exigências
might
para
be
uma
more
comunicação
adequate
jornalística
not to
fundamentada no
circulate it.
conceito
There
de
are other
fraternidade.
requisites for journalistic communication based on the concept of
É o caso, por
fraternity.
exemplo, do não uso de fórmulas
For
prontas
example, it's the case of not using preconceived formulae
que tendem a reforçar estereótipos como os já conhecidos
because these might reinforce
valores
stereotypes
notícia.
with the already
A
well-known
fraternidade,
value
concebida como novo
of the
critério
news.
de
Fraternity understood
noticiabilidade
as a new
e,
criterion
como
of
tal, valoriza o que de
newsworthiness,
positivo
giving value to
as relações
positive
humanas tendem a
items
construir,
and that human
pode
relations tend
contribuir
to
para
build,
penetrar na complexidade
can
das situações
contribute to enter into the
de modo
complexity
a ajudar
of these
efetivamente
situations so as to be able to
ao
effectively
público a
aid
compreender a realidade
the
dos
audience
acontecimentos.
to understand the
É
reality
isso.
of
Muito
what
obrigado.
happens. Thank you very much.
Grazie, Luis.
Thank you, Luis.
Un applauso. Benissimo. Allora, continuiamo
And we
con
continue
Anna Clara
with
Giovanni
Anna
con
Clara
il tema
Giovanni with the
dialogo in
topic
comunità e la risposta alla
dialogue in
polarizzazione
communities
e le
and the answer
religioni
to
hanno secoli di
polarization.
esperienza. Lei è giornalista,
She's a
video editor e
journalist. She's
designer e
also
anche membro
chief
del
editor and
Religions
also
for
member
Peace
of the
Youth
Religions for
Media Team.
Peace media team.
Ha fatto la laurea in
She
comunicazione
has
con
graduated in
specializzazione in
communication
giornalismo.
with a
Come
specialization on
giornalista,
journalism, and as
montatrice
journalist,
video e
she
designer
has
prodotti
worked a lot
multimediali
with
per comunicare
social
come
media,
l'istituzione sia un
with
potente
content
percorso di
creation, to
trasformazione
communicate
personale e
how
sociale.
actually communication can
Anche
lead
fa
to social
parte
change.
della
She also
ONG
belongs to the
Nuova
NGO
Umanità.
Nuova
Benvenuta,
Umanità,
Anna
New
Clara.
Humanities. So welcome here, Anna Clara, and
Grazie,
thank you for being here with
grazie,
us.
parlerò in inglese.
I'll speak in English.
So, very happy to be here today with you. Thank you for this opportunity. You will see that my research is still in early stages. So, I will share with you some general ideas that I aim to address during my research in the next few years. The on-life reality is overcoming the dichotomous mindset of virtual and real life, moving to a perspective of complementarity and interconnectedness of all aspects of human and social life. Less than a century ago, most people rarely moved away from their birthplace, living in communities where identities were clearly defined by territory, family, religion, language, or social group. However, as Stuart Hall suggests, identity is shaped in relation to the other. It's a dynamic relational process. With technology mediating social interactions, it assumes a critical role in shaping identities, giving away a more fluid and multifaceted construction of identity, intensifying its complexity. From this context, it becomes necessary to rethink the role of dialogue among religions in the digital age through two characteristic phenomena of our time: fragmentation and polarization. In a mediatized society, individuals are exposed to vast amounts of information through diverse media and technological devices. Although this variety of sources has broadened the range of narratives, the advent of social media has shifted towards a consumer capitalistic logic. Driven by metrics of engagement and retention with the attention community, social media dynamics lead to the fragmentation of information. The phenomenon of fragmentation of information extends to individuals and their identities because social interactions are mediated by the dynamics of social media, which includes our algorithms, filter bubbles, and echo chambers. Fragmentation also challenges various forms of authority: traditional media authority, institutional authority, and religious authority. On social media, authority is granted to those who master viral strategies, known as influencers. In the religious context, these influencers shift the focus from institutions to autonomous leadership, often detached from formal traditions. In this space of excess information, an illusion of knowledge is created, where the individual may feel connected to others, but this doesn't generate social cohesion. On the contrary, it leads to polarization. This polarization excludes dialogue and the possibility of a more complex understanding of reality. Instead of building bridges between different groups, walls emerge, and these groups begin to see each other as enemies. The inspiration to address these challenges lies in the root of the word communication. It shares origins with the words communion and community. Communication means, therefore, is about creating a good common ground where dialogue becomes possible. Here, religious communities have centuries of experience to offer. The sense of community, deeply rooted in religious traditions, provides a valuable perspective on fostering meaningful encounters that promote deep relationships. The interreligious dialogue experience, in particular, could offer interesting insights. By focusing on shared values, interreligious dialogue becomes a powerful tool for overcoming polarization as it builds bridges while simultaneously enriching personal identity. Catherine Cornell highlights that a commitment, meaning a deep engagement on religious tradition, it is crucial. This commitment is crucial, a crucial foundation for meaningful dialogue. This commitment fosters a strong sense of self that enables individuals to connect with others from a place of rootedness. In this way, interreligious dialogue serves as a response to fragmentation. Through a relational exercise of encouraging and understanding others' beliefs, one grows and strengthens their own identity. This certainly requires a bold and courageous commitment from religious communities that often find themselves constrained by their traditions and doctrines. The document Towards a Full Presence, published by the Dicastery for Communication in 2023, offers a pastoral reflection on engagement with social media. It encourages the faithful to reach out to others, your neighbor, in digital spaces, aware of their dynamics and limitations. And then here I quote, "We can and should be the ones who move from the understanding of digital media as an individual experience to one that is founded upon mutual encounter, which fosters community building." Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Clara, for your contribution. It's been a really interesting contribution, and it's very important to outline all those aspects. So thank you again, Anna Clara. So now we're going ahead with the next speaker. We're going ahead with the next scholar, with the next specialist. My apologies for my Italian language. And she's Claudia Huber. She's going to talk about a very interesting topic, that is dialogue from a form of communication to a way of life. So thank you. It's a great joy to see you here, Claudia. Perfect. So Claudia has done a PhD for the University Institute in Lopiano, Sofia. She has studied theology and social sciences at the and she has done an MA in conflict studies, and she has also studied at the Habsburg University in Germany, and she works on projects for the conflict prevention in pastoral in different cities in Germany and in Austria. So welcome here, Claudia. Thank you.
Grazie a tutti voi per
Thank you
in questo
for this
pomeriggio.
meeting, for making this encounter possible
Sì, io
this
nella mia
evening.
ricerca appunto mi
Yeah,
sono
for sure. In
occupata
my
della
research,
cultura
I've
del
worked
dialogo
on the culture of dialogue.
e lì per capire
And of course,
cos'è
it is
il dialogo,
important
per me
it
è
is
una
important to
forma,
understand what
diciamo,
dialogue is about.
specifica di una
And
comunicazione, no?
the dialogue is a
E ho
specific form of
preso come
communication.
base la definizione di
And I
dialogo
have
di
used
Patricia
the
Romney,
dialogue definition by Patricia Romney,
dove viene eseminato il concetto di dialogo
and
e poi
I examined the concept of
esamino il
dialogue
concetto di
also in the
dialogo anche negli
writings of
scritti di Chiara
Chiara
Lubich.
Lubich.
E così, allora, nella mia
Perfect.
ricerca
So
per
in
il
my
dialogo ho
research,
applicato la
I
definizione
have
di
applied
Patricia Romney,
the
che
Patricia
dice che il
Romney's
dialogo
definition that says that
è
the
una
dialogue
conversazione
is
incentrata
a centered
che
conversation
mira
that
consapevolmente
looks
all'obiettivo di
consciously
aumentare la
at the aim of
comprensione,
increasing the understanding,
ad affrontare problemi,
to face
a porre
problems, and
interrogativi,
also to make
a
questions,
esaminare
and
pensieri o
also to
azioni.
examine thoughts and actions.
Esso, cioè il dialogo, impiega il cuore
So
e la
the dialogue
mente
is about the heart and the mind.
ed
It
è
engages
diverso
both the heart and the mind.
dalla
It
comune
is different from
conversazione quotidiana,
the daily
nel
life
senso che il
conversation,
dialogo ha
in
sempre
that
un
dialogue
focus e
always
uno
has a
scopo
focus and a
e
purpose,
pone
always.
l'accento sia
And
sul
dialogue
rapporto tra i partecipanti
emphasizes both the
sia
relationship between
sull'argomento da
participants and
esplorare.
the topic to be explored.
In
So
definitiva, secondo
ultimately,
Romney, un
true
vero
dialogue
dialogo
requires
presuppone l'apertura a
openness to
modificare le
changing
nostre
our deeply
convinzioni
held beliefs.
profondamente
So, and this
radicate.
is the definition by Romney.
Ecco, è un dialogo
Thus,
definito così
dialogue is defined
si trova
as
anche nei
intentional,
scritti e anche nella vita,
and
soprattutto di
we
Chiara
can
Lubich e del
see that
movimento dei
definition
focolari
also
da lei
in
fondato.
Chiara Lubich's writings, the
Anche se
founder of the
dobbiamo
Focolare
dire che
movement.
fino agli
Well,
anni
of course, we must
60
say that until the
Chiara Lubich
1960s, Chiara
non
Lubich
parla mai
did
di
not
dialogo,
speak
non
of
si
dialogue.
trova questa
So
parola
the
nei suoi
word
scritti.
dialogue cannot be found in her
Solo
writings,
quando incontra con
but
persone di altre chiese e religioni,
only when she
lì entra
met
anche
with people
questa
from
parola.
other churches and religions, well, she
Fin lì
started
lei
using the
parlava
word
di
dialogue.
comunione,
Until then, she
specialmente
just
tra i
spoke of
membri del
communion, especially
movimento.
among the members of the movement.
E la
And
comunicazione
for
e il
her,
dialogo
communication and
sono per
dialogue
lei
are
essenziali
essential
per
to
costruire
building
e
and
mantenere
maintaining this
questa
communion.
comunione. In essa
So in this
l'ascolto
context,
attivo
active
e il
listening and
rispetto
also mutual
reciproco
respect
diventano gli
become the
strumenti per una
tools for
comunicazione
authentic
autentica
communication
ed una
and
comunione
mutual
reciproca.
communion.
Troviamo nei suoi scritti
So in
soprattutto
her writings,
spiegazioni
we
su
mostly find
come
explanations
avvicinarsi
on how to
all'altro per
approach others to
comunicare,
communicate,
con quali atteggiamenti
with which
usarlo.
attitudes to meet them.
Quindi qui lei va
Thus,
oltre la sola
she goes beyond
spiegazione di
merely
un atto
explaining a communicative
comunicativo o
act or a
un'azione
social
sociale
action,
e
and
descrive
she
uno stile
describes
di
a style of
comunicazione,
communication,
una certa
a
cultura
certain
di
culture of
comunicazione
communication and
del
dialogue.
dialogo.
So in the culture of dialogue of Chiara Lubich, we can see somehow different principles. There are key principles. I would like to point out all the 4 key principles. So the first principle within the dialogue culture is the recognition of the dignity of every person. So this aspect derives from Lubich's faith in the fundamental equality of all human beings before God. In an authentic dialogue, the other person is not seen merely as an interlocutor, but as a brother or sister with values and deserving respect. This perspective demands active and deep listening, as every individual has something unique to offer. Then, another central concept in Lubich's culture of dialogue is unity in diversity. So this is a very key aspect in the culture of dialogue. So again, unity in diversity. For Chiara, dialogue does not aim to eliminate differences, but to value them. So cultural, religious, or personal differences should not be seen as obstacles, but as a wealth that can enrich all parties involved. Dialogue thus becomes a tool to achieve a form of unity that does not erase individual peculiarities, but harmonizes them within a broader framework. Then another key principle is the golden rule of mutual love. So of course, reciprocity is very important. So this golden rule comes from the gospel, and this rule requires loving others as oneself. And in the context of dialogue, this means committing to truly understanding the other, setting aside one's own prejudices and seeking common ground. So mutual love implies a willingness to, in a certain sense, sacrifice one's own viewpoint to embrace that of the other. And it is important to listen to the other, not in a spirit of renunciation, but in a spirit of mutual enrichment. It is reciprocity that ensures that neither party is ignored or unheard, thus establishing dialogue as both a social action and a relational exchange. Finally, Chiara Lubich sees dialogue as a privileged tool to achieve universal brotherhood among human beings. Of course, as we have seen, this is not a synonym for uniformity, but for harmony among differences. Dialogue then becomes a dynamic process which all parties are called to collaborate in building a new reality founded on mutual understanding. And it is important to aim at that reality. So we can see that for Chiara Lubich, the dialogue is not just a simple verbal exchange of ideas or opinions, but for her the dialogue is an act of openness toward the other. It is a means to realize universal brotherhood among human beings, overcoming barriers that divide them, be they cultural, religious, or social. So the fundamental principle of Lubich's dialogue lies in the awareness of the dignity of every human being, created in the image of God, which entails our predisposition to listen, understand, and welcome others without prejudice. So for Lubick, dialogue is a communicative act rooted in Christian faith, yet open to all people. And the source of this culture of dialogue and the source of this Chiara Lubick's culture of dialogue can be found in Chiara's spirituality and also in her understanding and vision of God. And this connection that is particularly evident because there's this connection between spirituality and the reality. And we can see this connection in a conversation addressed to the entire folklore movement in January 2004. And I would like to read this quote at the very end. She says, "For us, folklore movement members, we are called to a collective spirituality, and dialogue is permanent. And the reason is this: we are all called to reflect the Holy Trinity within us, where the three divine persons are in eternal dialogue, eternally one and eternally distinct." In practice, for all of us, it means that whenever we deal with one or more brothers or sisters, directly or indirectly by phone, writing by mail, or in relation to them through the work we do, the praise we lift up, we feel we are all in a perpetual dialogue, called to dialogue. How? By opening ourselves to it, to the brother, to the sister, listening with an empty mind to what the brother wants, what he says, what concerns him, what he desires. And once this has happened, stepping in to provide what is needed and what is appropriate. And if there are moments and hours when I need to focus on myself, to eat, to rest, to dress, I do everything with the brothers and sisters in mind, always keeping in mind those who are waiting for me. In this way, and only in this way, by living the spirituality of unity or of communion, I can realize ever wider spaces of universal fraternity. So here we can see the motivation behind the whole movement, behind the whole folklore movement, to go towards a dialogue that is not made, but that is lived. And of course, we need to live the dialogue as God does. And of course, for Chiara Lubick, humans are called to imitate the lifestyle of God. From this lifestyle, several conclusions emerge. First and foremost, this way of life is not only lived by an individual, but by a social group. So there's a community behind. And of course, this fact underpins its transformative character. It can contribute to addressing the challenges of contemporary society, characterized by increasing cultural and religious plurality. So her vision, based on the recognition of each person's dignity, unity in diversity, and mutual love, offers an innovative and radically inclusive approach to dialogue. However, it is not easy to implement this vision. It requires a change in mindset. It requires an openness to the other that transcends the barriers of fear and prejudice. It cannot be imposed, but if lived, it has the potential for transformation. Thus, dialogue can be, at the same time, both a means and also a style of communicative life. So thank you.
Grazie Claudia, grazie.
Thank you, Claudia. Thanks a million.
Grazie per la partecipazione.
Thank you for your presentation.
Andiamo ai gruppi di dialogo.
So now we can go
Ci
to the dialogue groups.
rivediamo
And we'll be
alle
back
5:25
at
ora Italia.
5:25
Ricordiamo
p.m.
che
when in
l'obiettivo
Italy it's
è del
5:25 p.m.
condividere anche del riflettere su
Of course,
quanto
the purpose
visto
is
in
to
questo
share
panel.
ideas upon all the topics that
Per
have
coloro
been
che ci sono
tackled
iscritti
during this panel. So
recentemente,
if you have
vi
signed up
chiediamo di
recently,
aggiungersi
we
maniera
ask you to
individualmente,
go
per favore.
manually
Allora
into the
ci rincontriamo nei
breakout
gruppi
sessions,
di
okay?
lingue.
So
Grazie a
you
tutti.
need just to select your group and you can enter the session, the work group.
We are ready, and I hope that this has been fruitful. In the Portuguese language group, we saw a lot of contributions. It was very enriching indeed. And this brings us to the end of this first day of the International Congress Togetherness, Communication for Peace, promoted by Net1. And we meet again tomorrow at the same time, which is 2 p.m. Central European Time. So everybody can work out their time zones. Remember to link up a few minutes before, just for translation test, and to be able to begin on time at 2 p.m. Thank you enormously for your participation and for your presence, and I wish you a happy end of the day. Thank you very much.
Ciao, grazie. Grazie.